Chapter 1725. The malicious-looking young man had a bad feeling when he saw Muronyu looking at him. As expected, Muronyu said calmly, "Hand over your spatial treasures and all the treasures that have acknowledged you as their master." There was no threat, and his voice was calm. However, the foreheads of the two young men were drenched in cold sweat. Muronyu's strength was right there, and it gave them immense pressure. At the same time, they regretted it. Of all the people he could rob, why did he have to rob this death god? They were digging their own graves. Why do the experts these days like to pretend to be weak? The malicious-looking young man cursed Muronyu in his heart. He felt that Muronyu had purposely suppressed his cultivation level and attracted their attention. Otherwise, they definitely wouldn't have failed miserably. However, even though they were cursing Muronyu in their hearts, they still took out their spatial treasures. They didn't dare to play any tricks and handed over all the treasures that had acknowledged them as their master to Muronyu, even though their minds were damaged. They only took the initiative to hand them over to Muronyu because their minds were damaged. If they angered Muronyu, it would be impossible for them to be damaged. After all, Muronyu could very well kill him. The other person only had one chaos gem, while the malicious-looking young man had more than 10. However, Muronyu was still dissatisfied. Were there really so few chaos gems? Therefore, Muronyu asked. The malicious-looking young man and the other person glanced at Muronyu as if they were looking at an idiot. However, they looked away very soon. They didn't want to die. Although the chaos layer is condensed from chaos energy, there are extremely few chaos gems. Even if there are, they are in the hands of the experts and forces. The chaos gems that the three of us have are not enough at all, the malicious-looking young man explained. Muronyu was speechless. The malicious-looking young man and the other two were rank 9 chaotic ancestor sages. With their strength, as long as they returned to the holy world, they were all ancestor-level existences. Although he couldn't get anything he wanted, at the very least, it wasn't difficult to obtain something like a saint bloodline. Why was he so miserable in the chaos layer? As expected of someone who has never been to the primal chaos layer, he doesn't know the uses of primal chaos crystals. The young man mocked Muronyu in his heart for a while, but he still explained, "In the Holy Realm, it's extremely difficult to make a breakthrough by absorbing the power of saint bloodline. Only primal chaos crystals could allow a peak ancestral saint to continuously increase his strength and finally charge into the saint rankings. In fact, he might even be able to break through to the utmost exalted level. However, that's impossible in the saint's world." A hint of surprise flashed across Muronyu's face. However, he soon sneered in his heart. What Supreme Being experts used wasn't primal chaos energy at all. Back then, he had almost been slapped to death by the Supreme Being of the ancient battlefield. Having seen Ji-Zun in action, he had the absolute right to speak on this matter. The power of a Supreme Being was 5-colored. It was the same holy light as a Supreme Being weapon. Moreover, if it was so easy to become a Supreme Being, there would be more than just a few Supreme Beings since ancient times. However, primal chaos energy was indeed powerful. Take Muronyu as an example. Under the same circumstances, he could sweep through all the experts in the saint's world. Moreover, he could absolutely suppress them. At the same cultivation level, the sages who had absorbed the power of primal chaos crystals should be stronger than the sages who hadn't. However, primal chaos layer was also divided into factions. This made Muronyu feel somewhat astonished. There are many factions in the primal chaos layer. Some races are just one faction. For example, our human race has many factions. The largest faction is called the Primal Chaos Sect. The leader of the Primal Chaos Sect is extremely mysterious. Even now, no one knows his identity. The entire Primal Chaos Sect only recruits experts on the saint rankings. Next, the young man explained the major factions in the Primal Chaos layer in detail. After listening to the young man's explanation, Muronyu came to a realization. He had a rough understanding of the Primal Chaos layer. To put it bluntly, the Primal Chaos layer was a space within the saint's world but it was also a space independent of the Saint's world. Moreover, the primal chaos layer was more powerful than the entire Saint's world. This was because many sages who had reached the level of primal chaos ancestor sages had entered the primal chaos layer in hopes of breaking through to a higher level. Of course, not everyone was in the primal chaos layer. Moreover, they could come and go anytime. Most importantly, the factions in the primal chaos layer were completely unrelated to the factions in the Saint's world. In the Saint's world, you could be a member of two different sacred grounds and factions. However, in the primal chaos layer, you could join the same faction. No matter what your situation was in the Saint's world, even if you were an enemy, as long as you joined a faction in the primal chaos layer, you could not have internal strife or kill each other. Of course, as long as you left the primal chaos layer, you could fight however you wanted. In other words, the factions in the primal chaos layer were only effective in the primal chaos layer. Their factions would not extend to the Saint's world. Can we leave now? After explaining the situation in the primal chaos layer in detail, the young man felt that there was nothing more to say. Therefore, he asked carefully, "Scram, don't let me see you again. Otherwise, I will definitely kill you." Moronyu waved his hand. Therefore, the young man quickly left. It was not that Moronyu was soft-hearted. It was just that there was no need to kill these people. It was not a bad idea to let these people stir shit in the primal chaos layer. Moreover, Moronyu had other plans. Big brother, are we going to let that person go just like that? He killed third brother and stole all of our treasures. After distancing themselves from Moronyu, another person spoke to the malicious-looking youth in a bad mood. The young man's face was extremely gloomy and murderous. All their treasures had been stolen by Moronyu. This made him feel extremely pained. However, Moronyu was too strong. What would they do? Why don't you go and kill him? Take back our treasures? The young man said in a bad mood. That person immediately fell silent. If he could kill, he would have done so long ago. Why would he let Moronyu steal his treasures? But that person was filled with unwillingness. The young man sneered, "Don't forget about the Saint Execution Hall. That kid is only a rank 3 Primal Chaos Ancestor Sage. However, his strength is so terrifying. He is the favorite prey of the Saint Execution Hall." Hearing this, the other person's heart trembled. His eyes revealed a trace of fear. Big brother, is the Saint Execution Hall the most mysterious assassin organization in the Primal Chaos layer? I heard that they love to hunt the super geniuses of the various races. However, any genius that they target has never been able to escape. It is said that they do not belong to any race because every race's genius has been hunted before. Big brother, are we really going to tell them this information? The young man nodded slightly. If he reported Morongyu's situation to the Saint Execution Hall, then Moronyu would definitely die. He would also receive a certain amount of reward. He loved to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Saint Execution Hall? Interesting. What the young man did not know was that while they were discussing, Moronyu, who was billions of miles away, heard everything clearly. The Primal Chaos sect was only the strongest organization in the Primal Chaos layer. Moronyu would not gain much from this. However, he was more interested in the Saint Execution Hall. The Saint Execution Hall had assassins from the human race, sacred race, and demon race. They specialized in hunting down geniuses with heaven-defying talent. It was said that they were there to kill them. However, Moronyu did not think so. Moreover, the Saint Execution Hall was powerful. Moronyu needed such a powerful organization under his command. It could be used in the Primal Chaos layer or even in the Sacred World. However, the Saint Execution Hall was just too mysterious. No one knew where their headquarters were. If Moronyu wanted to find them, it would be like finding a needle in a haystack. Therefore, he wanted the assassins of the Saint Execution Hall to come knocking on his door. However, Moronyu also knew that with his strength, he could easily defeat the young man. He did not need the Saint Execution Hall to take action. Therefore, he needed to do something that would make him famous in the Primal Chaos layer. Of course, if Moronyu announced his identity, the assassins of the Saint Execution Hall would definitely take action. However, This time, Murong Yu did not enter the primal chaos layer with his original appearance. I heard that the Saint Rankings is located at the center of the primal chaos layer. Many experts from various races gather there. Why don't I go take a look? With a thought, Murong Yu flew towards the Saint Rankings according to the location the young man had given him. Entering the primal chaos layer is like a fish in water. My speed and strength have increased by at least 30%. I wonder if the others have suppressed me? After flying for a while, Murong Yu was pleasantly surprised. As he moved through the primal chaos layer, Murong Yu could feel the pulsing primal chaos force constantly surging towards him from all directions. It was like seeing a wanderer returning from a trip. It seemed so intimate. In here, Murong Yu's strength increased explosively. His ability to conceal himself was so great that even utmost exalts would not be able to discover his existence. The most terrifying thing was his consciousness. It had increased by 100-fold. If Murong Yu's divine sense could cover hundreds of millions of miles in the holy world, then his divine sense could cover hundreds of millions of miles in this place. Of course, Murong Yu's consciousness did not cover such a small area. It was just a metaphor. One could imagine how terrifying it was. As they flew, an incomparably huge pillar that supported the heavens gradually appeared in Murong Yu's line of sight. Murong Yu knew that it was the legendary Saint Rankings. My clone has also entered the Saint Rankings? I could take a look at my clone's ranking on the Saint Rankings. Just as Murong Yu was about to approach the Saint Rankings, he suddenly stopped. This was because he had just discovered that his clone had broken through and entered the Saint Rankings. Where did this ant come from? How dare you approach the Saint Rankings? Get the hell back. Murong Yu was about to approach the Saint Rankings. However, at this moment, a furious roar rang out. At the same time, an incomparably large hand shattered the void and ruthlessly slapped down at Murong Yu. Chapter 1726. Guang was very depressed recently. Not long ago, he obtained hundreds of chaos crystals when he was searching for treasures in the chaos layer. This number of chaos crystals was enough for someone of his level to use for a long time. It could even increase his strength by a small step and raise his ranking on the holy rankings. But good times did not last long. Before he could even be happy, a group of people rushed out. Then, they knocked him to the ground with a few punches. Then, they forcefully took away his spatial treasure. The other party even forced Guang to spit out the sacred weapon that he had recognized as his master for many years. This made Guang vomit blood repeatedly. But he was not as strong as others, and could only watch as those people left after snatching the treasure. In the end, he did not even know who the other party was. He wanted to take revenge, but did not know who the target of his revenge was. The depressed Guang returned to the Chaos City dejectedly, and then appeared on the holy rankings. But when he came to the holy rankings, he realized that his nemesis, whose strength had always been on par with him, had risen in the holy rankings. This made Guang even more unhappy. When it rains, it pours. When Guang vomited blood and was about to leave, his nemesis also happened to come over to see his ranking on the holy rankings. So, a great battle inevitably broke out. Originally, the two of them were evenly matched. But now, Guang did not even have a single sacred weapon on him, while his opponent's strength had increased by a lot. So, Guang was in a tragedy. He was directly suppressed by his opponent. After humiliating him for half a day, his nemesis laughed loudly and left. Before leaving, the other party left behind a sentence: "Get out of the chaos layer for me, or I'll beat you up every time I see you." Guang even had the heart to die, and at this moment, he just happened to see Murong Yu, who was only a rank 3 chaotic ancestor saint, charging over. So, Murong Yu naturally became his punching bag. But would Murong Yu really become his punching bag? Seeing Guang's vicious slap, Murong Yu felt a little angry. What he hated the most in his life were those who had no enmity with him, and those who tried to kill someone they had never met before the first time they met. Obviously, Guang was such a person. Therefore, Murong Yu did not hesitate at all as he threw out a punch. "Oh, With a loud sound, Hiruegwang's big hand was immediately smashed into pieces. As for Murong-Yu's fist, it went straight for Hiruegwang's body. Hiruegwang was sent flying. Puff! During this process, Hiruegwang spat out a mouthful of blood. This time, he really vomited blood. What's going on? Murong-Yu retracted his hand and looked at Hiruegwang in astonishment. Is this guy really that weak? His attack just now wasn't that powerful. With Hiruegwang's realm and strength, he wouldn't vomit blood even if he took it head-on. This was because Murong-Yu did not sense any killing intent from Hiruegwang. Otherwise, he would have killed Hiruegwang with a single punch in order to attract the attention of the Saint Execution Hall's assassins. Sigh. Poor Hiruegwang is being beaten up again. It's fine that he was beaten up by his rival who is ranked higher than him on the Saint ranking. But now, he's being beaten up by a Stage 3 powerhouse. No wonder he vomited blood. If it were me, I would have vomited blood. This child is really too unlucky. First, he was robbed, and then he escaped with only his underwear. Now he's like this. His reputation is gone just like that. Hearing the discussions around him, Murong-Yu finally understood why Hiruegwang was so weak. He didn't bleed because he was beaten up. He vomited blood himself. Good kid, you actually made Hiruegwang vomit blood with a single punch. Looks like you're not weak either. Take my punch. At this moment, a thunderous voice was heard. At the same time, a huge fist the size of a small mountain broke through the void and blasted toward Murong-Yu's head at lightning speed. Go play somewhere else, Murong-Yu said indifferently as he sent out a palm strike. Bang! The huge fist was directly blown apart. Immediately after, Murong-Yu sent a palm strike through the air. After a blood-curdling scream, a huge man was directly blasted away. Shocking. The surrounding people all looked at Murong-Yu with shocked gazes. If it was a coincidence that Hiruegwang was sent flying, then it was no coincidence that the burly man was sent flying. This was because the burly man's ranking on the Saint ranking was much higher than Hiruegwang's. Is he really only a Stage 3 chaotic ancestor saint? But his strength is so terrifying? Aren't all Stage 9 chaotic ancestor saints on the Saint ranking? The surrounding people looked at Murong-Yu in disgust. Murong-Yu didn't pay any attention to this. This was the result that he wanted. After sending 2 Stage 3 saints flying, the people from Saint Execution Hall should have noticed him, right? If they were still not interested, Murong-Yu might have to challenge those who were rank higher on the Saint ranking. Murong-Yu took a step forward and stood in front of Hiruegwang, who was still vomiting blood. I heard that you were robbed. If I'm not mistaken, you're so poor that you're only left with a pair of underwear, right? Do you want to take revenge? Do you want to kill your sworn enemy? Do you want to improve your strength? If you submit to me, I'll make your wish come true. Before Hiruegwang could speak, Murong-Yu took another step forward and disappeared from Hiruegwang's side. He appeared below the Saint ranking. He looked up at the Saint ranking that was so high that he could not see the bottom of it. Murong-Yu saw his name immediately. Murong-Yu, 70,000 on the Saint ranking. It was neither too high nor too low, exactly 70,000. Then, Murong-Yu looked down slowly. Zhao Jiqing, Kurlan, and Zhang Ao, Duan Muqing, and the others' names could be seen. However, none of these people were ranked within the top 80,000. Zhao Jiqing, Kurlan, and the others were still okay. They could still improve their strength. However, Zhang Ao, Duan Muqing, and the others' strength had been pushed up by Murong-Yu. They had no room for improvement. In other words, they were now ranked the highest among them. If there were any newcomers on the Saint ranking in the future, they might be removed. Of course, they could also improve their ranking. It would be fine as long as a large number of Stage 3 saints died. Why isn't there a name for my clone? Murong-Yu looked at the Saint ranking from 70,000 to the end. He looked 3 times but did not find his clone's name. He could not help but feel puzzled. He clearly knew that his clone had broken through. With his strength, it would not be a problem for him to enter the Saint ranking. Could it be that it's above me? Murong-Yu felt that it was a little impossible. However, Murong-Yu still looked up one by one. Not long after, he finally saw the 3 words, Murong the Dragon. 60,000th. His clone was actually 60,000th on the saint ranking. It seemed to be 10,000 ranks higher than his original body. This made Murong Yu a little speechless. In terms of cultivation level and not actual combat strength, Murong Yu's cultivation level was probably the lowest among all the people around him. This had always made him depressed. It was also the reason why the people around him made fun of him. Fortunately, Murong Yu's combat strength was unparalleled. He did not care too much about cultivation level. After all, combat strength was the way to go. My clone just beat up a stage 3 saint of the Dragon Clan who was ranked around 30,000. At that moment, Murong Yu received a message from his clone, as expected of an extraterrestrial expert's cultivation technique. Not only did it allow my clone to enter 60,000th on the saint ranking, but its actual strength is even more terrifying. If I wait until my clone stabilizes his cultivation level, I'm afraid even the 20,000th on the saint ranking will not be his match. My clone's achievements are definitely not limited to the saint ranking. He's an honorable or even a sovereign. It's impossible for him to become a chaos controller. But can he reach the Sun Monarch's level or even surpass him? I'm really looking forward to it. Murong Yu thought to himself. A smile appeared on his face. Then, Murong Yu continued to look at the experts on the saint ranking. He roughly looked at the rankings of some of his main enemies and subordinates on the saint ranking. Finally, Murong Yu's gaze landed on the top of the saint rankings. The font of the last 10 names was especially huge. They were the 10 strongest people in the holy world apart from the honorable ones. Of course, that was before. Moreover, this was only the strength of their cultivation level and not their combat strength. Until now, Murong Yu still did not know the ranking rules of the saint ranking. If it was based on combat strength, he would definitely be in the top 10. But now, he was only at the pitiful 70,000. The higher the ranking, the bigger the font and the brighter the golden light. However, he did not know if it was because of the distance, but the higher the ranking, the less clear it was. Moreover, flying was prohibited near the saint ranking. It was impossible to fly up and see clearly. However, with Murong Yu's current strength, he could clearly see the names of the 10 people on the saint ranking. While Murong Yu was looking at the 10 people, someone beside him whispered, "Don't waste your energy. Without a certain rank on the saint rankings, you won't even be able to see the top 100, let alone the top 10. He was not talking about Murong Yu, but a rank 9 chaotic ancestor saint who had just arrived. At this moment, the chaotic ancestor saint was so frustrated that he could only see the rankings below 100,000. Why is that? Isn't the saint ranking's existence to let us see the ranking of the top people in the holy world? Why is it like this? Are you stupid? Without a certain level of strength, you don't even have the right to come into contact with that circle. Therefore, you don't have the right to know who's in that circle." The person mocked. "So that's the case. I thought it was because of the distance. The first name is so big, but it's a little blurry." Murong Yu laughed in his heart and continued to look. 2 of the top 10 on the saint ranking were acquaintances of Murong Yu. The 10th on the saint ranking was a disciple of the infernal Tao, Murong Yu's senior brother Yu Yangjia. The other acquaintance was the 3rd on the saint ranking, Dongmen Lishuan. As for the remaining 8 people, Murong Yu did not recognize any of them. However, he still remembered the names of these people. Chapter 17:27. These names were very common, so common that no one could tell from their names which race they were from. However, there were already 2 humans in the top 10 of the holy rankings. According to Little Lowly, there was at least 1 human in the top 10 of the holy rankings. However, who was this expert? Was it the 1st or 2nd place? Or was it someone else? Murong Yu fell into deep thought as he stared at the names on the holy rankings. However, as mentioned above, it was impossible to tell anything from the names. Moreover, if those people did not reveal their identities on their own accord, others would not know their identities at all. Plop! While Murong Yu was lost in thought as he stared at the names, a figure rapidly shot over from afar. Before anyone could react, the figure had already knelt down at Murong Yu's feet. "Master, I'm willing to submit to you. Please accept me." After kneeling down, The person immediately looked at Murong with anticipation and determination. This person was Hirue Guang. Plop. Before Murong could even react, some of the experts nearby couldn't accept this reality and staggered to the ground. Due to the series of events, Hirue Guang was already famous here. Although he had been robbed and suppressed by others, he had been robbed and suppressed. He was still an expert on the holy rankings. Even in the saints' world, there were terrifying existences ranked at the top. However, what the crowd could not accept was that this expert on the holy rankings had knelt down and submitted to someone. Wasn't this too cowardly? He had completely embarrassed the experts on the holy rankings. Therefore, after a moment, the surrounding people looked at Hirue Guang with disdain and sneered in their hearts. However, Hirue Guang was very calm in the face of these people's gazes. In fact, there was even a hint of disdain in his eyes. Hirue Guang did not know much about Murong. However, he could feel Murong's strength and endless potential. Although he didn't know what Murong's ranking on the saint rankings was, he didn't know. However, since ancient times, was there anyone who was only a third-stage chaotic ancestor saint who was ranked in the top tens of thousands of experts on the saint rankings? If he already had such strength when he was only a third-level primal chaos ancestor saint, then what would happen after he entered the ninth-level primal chaos ancestor saint realm? To what extent would his strength soar? Potential. Hirue Guang clearly saw Murong use endless potential. Although he was powerful, he had a powerful organization in the saints' world. But in reality, he was all alone. This was because he was the only expert on the saint rankings in his faction, and his strength was only at the bottom of the saint rankings. She was often bullied. But if he chose a master, then he would have a meteoric rise, and even his strength would skyrocket. Hirue Guang was willing to gamble this time. If he won the bet, his future achievements would be limitless. If he lost the bet, what could be worse than the current situation? Hirue Guang, are you really willing to submit to me? Submitting to me might allow you to achieve meteoric success, but might also allow you to die. And what I want is absolute loyalty. Once you submit, you can't betray me, or I'll kill you. Although the saints' world is vast, no one can escape from my pursuit. Murong didn't express his thoughts immediately. Instead, he said indifferently, I'm willing to submit sincerely and never betray you. Hirue Guang immediately swore without hesitation. He had already accepted his fate when he decided to follow Murong. Murong nodded. All right, I see that you're used to using saber, so I'll give you this peak chaotic ancestor artifact. At the same time, these 10 chaos crystals are a gift for our first meeting. As he spoke, Murong raised his hand and tossed a chaotic ancestor artifact and 10 chaos crystals to Hirue Guang. At the same time, he said, I've just arrived at the chaos layer, so I don't have many chaos crystals on me. I definitely won't mistreat you in the future. Murong directly said that he was a newcomer. But how could a newcomer be so generous? The chaotic ancestor artifact was the strongest sacred artifact below the sovereign artifact. However, Murong didn't even bat an eyelid as he tossed one out. As for the chaos crystals, they were no less valuable than ordinary chaotic ancestor artifacts. However, Murong casually tossed out 10 of them. That was simply too generous. Hirue Guang was overjoyed. He quickly caught them and thanked Lin Huang. I can see that your strength seems to have reached a bottleneck. Now, I'll help you break through to a higher realm. Before Hirue Guang could even react, Murong sent a palm strike down on Hirue Guang. Immediately, Hirue Guang was pressed to the ground by Murong's huge hand. At the same time, the chaotic energy in Murong's body surged into Hirue Guang's body like raging waves. Chaotic energy? Sensing the extremely pure chaotic energy that surged into his body from Murong's palm, Hirue Guang was shocked. Not only was Murong's energy massive, but it was also extremely pure. It was even countless times purer than the chaotic energy in the chaos layer. As an expert on the saint ranking who had been in the chaos layer for a long time, Hirue Guang knew that there was no one in the entire holy world who could match up to Murong's power. They could absorb the energy of the chaotic crystals, but the chaotic energy in the chaotic crystals was just too little. Even experts on the saint ranking could only mix in a tiny bit of chaotic energy. Ordinary experts on the saint ranking would only have 1/millionth of their strength in the chaotic energy. The best among them would have 100,000th of their strength. There were very few who could reach 100,000th of their strength. Hirue Guang was even certain that even the top 10 on the saint ranking would not have 1/10,000th of the chaotic energy in their bodies. However, Murong Yu's energy was all chaotic energy, and it was extremely pure. How could it not be shocked? The more chaotic energy there was, the more terrifying his fighting strength would be. However, how could chaotic energy be refined so easily? Therefore, in the chaos layer, those chaos gems were rare commodities that were worth hoarding and were extremely rare. Could it be that Master can directly absorb and refine chaotic energy? If that's really the case, his future achievements. Could he be that Murong Yu with a chaotic physique? The person who will become the chaos controller in the future? Thinking of this, Hirue Guang almost fainted from excitement. If Murong Yu really became the chaos controller, Hirue Guang's status would definitely not be low. Because of this, Hirue Guang's loyalty towards Murong Yu had grown imperceptibly. Focus! Murong Yu growled and continued to mobilize the chaotic energy to attack the barrier in Hirue Guang's body. Actually, it was not a barrier. In a holy world, there were no more realms between a rank 9 chaotic ancestor saint and a supreme. The experts on the saint ranking were only divided after one's strength reached a certain level. According to the amount of strength, they were divided into different levels. The more strength, the higher the level, and the stronger the fighting strength. Hirue Guang's strength was not enough, so he could not reach a higher level. Now, what Murong Yu wanted to do was to increase Hirue Guang's strength enough so that he could break through in one go and obtain more strength. He can increase his strength? Isn't this too ridiculous? When the surrounding people saw that Murong Yu wanted to increase Hirue Guang's strength, they could not help but shake their heads frantically. They felt that Murong Yu was too ridiculous. If it was so easy to increase one's strength, there would not be so few experts on the saint ranking in the holy world. Boom! Just as everyone was doubtful, Hirue Guang's body trembled violently. Then, a blinding holy light erupted from his body and shot into the sky. At the same time, an aura that was countless times stronger than before erupted from his body. Look, Hirue Guang's ranking on the saint ranking is jumping. At this moment, an expert on the saint ranking looked at the saint ranking. Then he saw Hirue Guang's name flickering with golden light as it jumped up continuously. Hirue Guang had really broken through, and his strength was even stronger than before. So powerful, it jumped by a total of 1,000 places. It rushed to more than 90,000. When Hirue Guang's name stopped jumping, an expert on the saint ranking exclaimed. He jumped by 1,000 places in one go. The surrounding people did not dare to believe it, but now that the truth was right in front of them, they had no choice but to believe it. Therefore, each and every one of the soldiers looked at Hirue Guang with envy. Some of them were even looking at Murong Yu with fervent gazes. It was as if they were looking at their lover, which made Murong Yu feel a chill. Ha! Feeling his powerful strength, Hirue Guang laughed out loud the moment he opened his eyes. At the same time, he leapt to his feet and deeply bowed to Murong Yu. This guy did not get carried away and forget about Murong Yu. Otherwise, Murong Yu would definitely not mind giving him a slap. I feel stronger than ever before. Ha ha! Wang Chong, your death is here. Hirue Guang laughed loudly. He could not wait to find Wang Chong and beat him up. In the end, he said arrogantly, "Take a detour when you see me in the future. Otherwise, I'll beat you up every time I see you." As he laughed, Hirue Guang looked at the envious and jealous people around him with a proud expression. Didn't these bastards look down on me before? Why, now that my strength has increased, they're envious. What a snob. Let's go to Primal Chaos City first, Murong Yu said indifferently. Then, he took the lead and flew towards Primal Chaos City. Hirue Guang naturally followed behind. He's leaving just like that? If I had known, I would have left earlier and let him be the master. Maybe my ranking on the Saint rankings would have increased. After Murong Yu left, one of the experts on the Saint rankings slapped his thigh and said regretfully, "Idiot, he is in Primal Chaos City. Can't we go there?" One of the experts on the Saint rankings beside him sneered. Then, he took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. Yes, Murong Yu is still in Primal Chaos City. They still had a chance. Therefore, everyone reacted and flew towards Primal Chaos City. Chapter 1728. Master, this Primal Chaos City is the biggest and safest city in the Primal Chaos layer. Because of this, one has to pay Primal Chaos crystals to enter. And the price of accommodation is also very expensive. As for the houses inside, they are even more expensive. Murong Yu paid a Primal Chaos crystal before entering Primal Chaos City. Seeing how Murong Yu casually handed a Primal Chaos crystal to the guards of Primal Chaos City, Hirue Guang felt his heart ache. Hence, he explained to Murong Yu, a Primal Chaos crystal could only allow one to stay in Primal Chaos City for a year. After a year, one would have to continue paying Primal Chaos crystals. Otherwise, one would be chased away by the soldiers of Primal Chaos City. Furthermore, if it was serious, one would be killed on the spot. Of course, this situation referred to the situation where one did not have property or accommodation. For example, those who had a house, accommodation, or members of certain powers were not included, because regardless of accommodation or their own house, or even members of powers, their accommodation fees, etc. were all included in taxes. In truth, they were all charged with Primal Chaos crystals. The cheapest inn in Primal Chaos City requires 1 Primal Chaos crystal for a night. And the cheapest house in Primal Chaos City requires 1,000 Primal Chaos crystals, and it is the smallest kind. Hirue Guang said, revealing a bitter smile. Murong Yu nodded slightly, not treating it as a big deal. You have a house in Primal Chaos City? Then you're living quite well. Hirue Guang shook his head and laughed bitterly. After countless years of hard work, he finally had a place to stay in Primal Chaos City. In his house. Hirue Guang did not even want to explain, because they had arrived at his house. What appeared in front of Murong Yu was a tall building, at least 10,000 stories high. Based on Murong Yu's estimation, every story had at least 100 houses, which also meant that just this building alone had at least 1,000,000 houses. This was a luxurious high-rise building. My house is on the top floor. The prices there are the cheapest, Hirue Guang explained, and had already soared into the sky. Naturally, Murong Yu also flew up. Bang! The door was opened by Hirue Guang, and immediately everything inside entered Murong Yu's line of sight. Immediately after, Murong Yu could not help but exclaim in surprise, Hirue Guang, this is your house? Hirue Guang's old face immediately turned red. This was indeed the house that he had spent countless years to buy. It was just that this house was too shabby. The room was extremely small and could only fit 1 bed. Then there was nothing left. Indeed, Hirue Guang's house only had 1 bed. In fact, to experts at their level, the size of the space didn't matter. In any case, they were only cultivating. But if the space was small, it would feel stifling. With a bigger space, it would be more comfortable to live in, and one would feel better, wouldn't it? This house is the cheapest, but it still costs Primal Chaos crystals. It took me a lot of time to come up with this number. Also, you have to pay some property management fee every year. If you don't pay it for 1,000 years, the house will be taken back. Hirue Guang said with a pained expression. Well, let's just take a walk around Primal Chaos City. Murong Yu felt his balls ache as he looked at the house with only 1 bed. Can you imagine what it would be like for 2 grown men to face each other on a bed? If Hirue Guang was a woman, Murong Yu would not mind. But this fellow was a grown man, it was too awkward. If people misunderstood that Murong Yu was gay, then his reputation would be ruined. Hirue Guang helplessly closed the door and flew away from the tall building. He did not want to bring Murong Yu over. It was simply too shabby. But Murong Yu was his master, and he did not even have a place to entertain Murong Yu. He couldn't help but feel ashamed. Can you help me raise my strength? I will even acknowledge you as my master. Murong Yu and He Rui Guang had just gone down when they were stopped by a person. And that person did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. I will acknowledge you as my master. Help me raise my strength. Before this person finished speaking, the others all started to speak. Murong Yu frowned slightly. He did not understand why these people were so spineless. As experts, there were even experts on the saint rankings. Where was their dignity? Where was their self-esteem? In reality, Murong Yu really did not understand them. After all, he had only cultivated for a short period of time, and his strength was higher than most people in the holy world. He definitely could not understand the helplessness of these people who stood at the top for billions of eras but could not raise their strength at all. They all wanted to become stronger, but they were unable to do so. Therefore, when they realized that Murong Yu could really raise He Rui Guang's strength, these people were tempted. Whatever self-esteem, whatever dignity, it was all fake. Only strength was eternal. As long as they were strong, so what if they were dogs? That was still a strong dog. It was better than being an ordinary person with weak strength. Please accept me. Seeing Murong Yu frown, a rank 9 chaotic ancestor sage immediately knelt in front of Murong Yu. Seeing this, the others knelt as well. This made Murong Yu's expression turn ugly. To be honest, he did not sympathize with these people, because these people were undoubtedly peak existences in the holy world. Even if their strength did not increase, they would still be on the level of ancestors. However, these people were insatiable and wanted to become stronger. But how could it be so easy? Murong Yu wanted to raise He Rui Guang's strength. It was because he had just arrived, and he needed an old fox to help him familiarize himself with everything. At the same time, he needed someone to do things for him. Most importantly, after he defeated He Rui Guang, he realized that He Rui Guang was not an evil person. Moreover, he also needed to attract the attention of the hallowed execution hall. There might be some good people among these people, but Murong Yu was not a philanthropist, so it was impossible for him to raise their strength. Moreover, if Murong Yu helped them, there would be more people coming tomorrow. Could Murong Yu raise the strength of the entire holy world? Although it was not determined by the heavens, the level of a saint's cultivation. Everything depended on their luck and hard work. Murong Yu did not want to rely on Murong Yu to raise their cultivation. Naturally, he would not help these people raise their strength. Most importantly, He Rui Guang's breakthrough was already his peak. He was just adding flowers to the brocade. However, these people were not in the same situation. Murong Yu might be able to raise their strength, but it would take a lot of time and effort. Who is that person? These people are begging him to raise their strength? Does he have some treasure on him? Idiot, that black-robed youth helped He Rui Guang raise his strength, and He Rui Guang's ranking on the holy rankings increased by 1,000. Is this true? It's actually so terrifying. I wonder who this person is. The surrounding people were shocked. Each and every one of them looked at Murong Yu in shock. At this moment, Murong Yu had already left with He Rui Guang, and they were strolling around Primal Chaos City. However, there was a huge group of people following behind him, which made Murong Yu unhappy. He Rui Guang, do you have something to say? Seeing He Rui Guang's hesitant look, Murong Yu frowned and asked. He Rui Guang hesitated for a moment, and finally said, Holy Master, if you have the ability, perhaps you can help them raise their strength. You just need to use a large amount of chaos gems and other treasures to exchange for it. After all, to survive in the primal chaos layer, you need too many resources. Murong Yu nodded. He had naturally considered this idea, but it was not easy to start such a thing. Furthermore, the gains would not make up for the losses. After all, how many people would lower their heads and beg him? How many of them would have enough chaos gems? And the amount of chaos gems Murong Yu needed was simply an astronomical figure. He did not want to buy a small house like the one he and Rui had in Primal Chaos City. Outside Primal Chaos City, other than the holy rankings, which is very safe, the other places are very dangerous. Other than all kinds of bandits, those chaos beasts are also very scary. Moreover, to find chaos gems, Not only do you need to be powerful, you also need luck, Hirue Guang advised earnestly. I will give you a chaos gem mine. You just need to help me raise my cultivation level. If you're interested in this deal, please come to the 3rd floor of the Primal Chaos Residence. Just then, a voice suddenly rang in Murong Yu's ears. Chaos gem mine? When he heard these words, Murong Yu was immediately tempted. Therefore, he lifted his leg and walked towards the Primal Chaos Residence, because he was right in front of the Primal Chaos Residence. Seeing Murong Yu walk straight towards the Primal Chaos Residence, Hirue Guang almost stumbled and fell to the ground. This place was not a place that ordinary people could enter. One meal only required 1,000 chaos gems to enter. It was a place that only the top of the Primal Chaos layer dared to enter. As for Murong Yu, he was well aware of Murong Yu's background. Not to mention 1,000 chaos gems, he couldn't even take out 10 chaos gems. Forget it, if it really doesn't work, I can only sell my house. Hirue Guang shook his head and followed Murong Yu in big strides. However, what surprised him was that the usually arrogant and snobbish waiters didn't show any signs of being arrogant or trying to chase Murong Yu away when they saw him. On the contrary, he had a fawning smile on his face as he respectfully led Murong Yu to the 3rd floor. What's going on? Could it be that Master has a powerful background in the Primal Chaos layer? Hirue Guang was a little dizzy as he pondered. However, this was for the best. He was lucky enough to follow Murong Yu into the Primal Chaos Residence. Otherwise, with his ability, he could forget about taking half a step into the Primal Chaos Residence in this lifetime. The 3rd floor was already cleared, and there was only a handsome young man in white sitting by the window. After seeing Murong Yu walk over, the young man didn't say anything. He only raised his wine glass and gestured to Murong Yu. Murong Yu sat opposite the young man in white without batting an eyelid. I just want to know if what you said is true. Chapter 1729. A brilliant smile appeared on the handsome young man's face as he looked at Murong Yu. Do you think I'm lying? Murong Yu nodded non-committally. At their level, it was extremely difficult to raise one's strength. It was much more valuable than ordinary chaos gem ores. The young man in white might be lying to Murong Yu. After lying to Murong Yu to raise his strength, he went back on his word. This was very normal. Initially, Murong Yu didn't expect such a good thing to happen. Therefore, he just came over to take a look. To others, raising one's strength by a little was extremely precious. However, that wasn't the case for Murong Yu. Therefore, if he could obtain a chaos gem, or Murong Yu could raise the young man's strength by a little. Hearing this, the young man in white rolled his eyes. If you don't believe me, I can bring you to check it out. However, can you raise my strength? The young man in white fiddled with the wine in his cup as he looked at Murong Yu calmly. However, Murong Yu could see a trace of hidden anticipation in the depths of his eyes. Murong Yu snickered inwardly. This guy's pretending to be all high and mighty. But secretly, he has an extremely strong expectation for an even greater strength. Murong Yu didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked, "What's your level now?" White Robe Marquis, around 50,000th on the Saint ranking. Disciple of the Chaotic Sect. My strength has reached the peak, but I can't break through. The young man in white, who was the White Robe Marquis, looked helpless and lonely as he said, "White Robe Marquis." Before Murong Yu could react, Hirue Guang, who was standing behind him, exclaimed. Sensing Hirue Guang's surprise, Murong Yu couldn't help but turn to look at Hirue Guang in confusion. Could this White Robe Marquis have a powerful background? Even if he was from the Chaotic Sect, Hirue Guang wouldn't be so surprised. Master, White Robe Marquis, is the young master of the Primal Chaos Sect. Although he is only ranked around 50,000 on the Saint ranking, his true strength is enough to defeat over 40,000 experts. This person was a genius. However, because he was ambushed when he was young, he was left with internal injuries. Therefore, his cultivation speed had slowed down by countless times. Even so, his strength is still extremely terrifying. Legend has it that the Primal Chaos sect has been trying to increase the White Robe Marquis's strength, but they have never succeeded. It would be the same even if a large number of Chaos gems were used. It's said that it's caused by the internal injuries in his body. If it weren't for those injuries, the White Marquis's strength would very likely enter the top 50 of the Saint rankings. Without any hesitation, Hirueguang briefly introduced the White Marquis. So that was the case. Muronyu only looked at the White Robe Marquis with a surprised expression, then returned to normal. White Marquis saw his reaction clearly. This fellow is quite interesting. If it were anyone else, they would probably try to curry favor with him. Even if they didn't, they would seem a little reserved. However, this person is unfazed. Who exactly is he? The White Robe Marquis looked at Muronyu and fell into deep thought. I can't guarantee that I can increase your strength. Why don't you let me take a look at your situation first? The White Robe Marquis nodded and relaxed his body and mind. Therefore, Muronyu's ocean-like divine thought quickly surged into the white-robed Marquis's body. Of course, his divine thought only lingered in the white-robed Marquis's body. He did not go to some of the key areas, such as the soul space. However, Muronyu did not find any problems with the white-robed Marquis's physical body after checking it once. Although the white-robed Marquis's physical body was far inferior to his, it was much stronger than many experts on the Saint rankings at the same level. Moreover, during this process, Muronyu felt that there was something wrong with the white-robed Marquis's soul fluctuation. The soul aura was sometimes strong and sometimes weak. Although the white-robed Marquis hid it very well, ordinary people would not notice it. However, it was still discovered by Muronyu. If there's no problem with your physical body, then there must be a problem with your soul. Muronyu's eyes suddenly flashed, and a smile appeared on his face. Seeing the smile on Muronyu's face, the white-robed Marquis was not surprised. After all, he knew his own situation. Muronyu hadn't even checked his soul. Would he be able to solve his problem? If I'm not wrong, your soul should be injured, right? Moreover, if I'm not wrong, not only is your soul injured, it's also incomplete. You must be missing something. Muronyu looked at the white-robed Marquis with a smile, but his words were shocking. Puffed. Hearing Muronyu's words, the white-robed Marquis spat out a mouthful of wine. Then, he looked at Muronyu in shock and blurted out, "How did you know?" After saying this, the white-robed Marquis regretted it. One must know that only 3 people knew about the problem with his soul. The first was himself, the second was his father. As for the third, it was the person who had almost killed him back then. However, that person had been killed by his father long ago. In other words, in the entire holy world, only the father and son knew about his soul. However, how did Muronyu know? How could he be so powerful? The white-robed Marquis was really shocked. Muronyu only smiled and did not say anything. After the shock, the white-robed Marquis was extremely excited. Muronyu could see the problem with his soul at a glance. Did that mean that he had a way to solve his soul? One must know that even his father could not solve the problem of his soul. Even though he had asked some soul sages to take a look, they did not find anything at all. If it were not for his soul, the white-robed Marquis would not dare to say that he would be in the top 10 of the holy rankings. However, because of his soul, he only made it to the top 50,000 on the holy rankings. If a miracle did not happen in this lifetime, he would probably never be able to reach a higher ranking. Can you cure it? The white-robed Marquis was really excited. He reached out his hand and grabbed Muronyu's hand as he asked excitedly. However, Hirueguang felt a chill run down his spine. I've never heard of the young master of the chaotic sect being gay. Hirueguang cursed in his heart. At this moment, Muronyu shook his hand and shook off the white-robed Marquis's hand. This guy should be mindful of the consequences. He did not have such a hobby. The white-robed Marquis smiled embarrassedly. Then, he stood up and walked to Muronyu. He bowed deeply and said, "Mister, please help me. I, the white-robed Marquis, will be deeply grateful and repay you generously." Muronyu didn't express his opinion and continued to talk about things that didn't seem to have any relevance. Humans have 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical souls. Once the 3 spiritual souls or the 7 physical souls are damaged, the soul will become incomplete. Without a complete soul, one will not be perfect in all aspects. As for you, you lack the most important of the 3 spiritual souls, the heavenly soul. If I'm not wrong, you're not the only one who can't increase your strength and will be stuck in this realm forever. Even your lifespan is less than an arrow away. The white-robed Marquis was shocked. He did not know that he could not live past an era. He had known all of this for a long time. He was shocked that Muronyu knew it so clearly. In fact, most people only know about the soul. However, they do not know that the soul is made up of the 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical souls. Losing any of the 3 spiritual souls or the 7 physical souls will have a great impact on that person. Moreover, such a person could not live forever, let alone jump out of the cycle of reincarnation. This was also the first time, Muronyu, you had met someone with an incomplete soul. Normally, a person's soul could only be strong or weak. However, there is no such thing as an incomplete soul. Even if one soul was injured, it would be injured together. It was rare for only the 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical souls to be injured. This is not easy. Muronyu shook his head. It was also his first time encountering such a situation. He did not know how to deal with it. Although he was a soul sage was not omnipotent. Mister, that Chaos Gem mine has extremely rich reserves. However, I know that just one Chaos Gem mine is not enough. I still want to hire you as an elder or guardian of the Chaos Sect. You will enjoy the highest treatment in the Chaos Sect. Moreover, I owe you a favor. The white-robed Marquis thought that Muronyu was negotiating terms. Therefore, the alliance gave him his terms. However, he was still afraid that Muronyu would not agree. He continued, "If Mister has any requests, I will try my best to fulfill them. I will not reject them." Muronyu rolled his eyes. The white-robed Marquis was sincere enough to give such a condition, especially the favor and the last condition. To be honest, Muronyu was tempted. However, he did not have much confidence. "Mister, I will bring you over to inspect the goods immediately." Seeing that Muronyu was still silent, the white-robed Marquis became anxious. After saying that, he turned around and was about to leave. Muronyu was speechless. Wasn't the white-robed Marquis a little too anxious? He did not even say anything. However, since the white-robed Marquis was so enthusiastic, Muronyu did not refuse. He immediately left the Chaos residence with the white-robed Marquis and flew out of the Chaos City. During this process, Muronyu discovered that there were 4 people following him from a distance. 4 experts on the Saint rankings. Moreover, these experts on the Saint rankings were not weak. The weakest of them was in the top 10,000 on the Saint rankings. At first, Muronyu thought that these people were following him. However, he soon realized that these 4 people should be the white-robed Marquis guards. As for those who followed Muronyu and wanted to ask Muronyu to increase their strength, they were chased away by the white-robed Marquis guards. In fact, the white-robed Marquis guards only showed the Chaos Sect signboard, and those people left in a hubbub. After the 7 of them left the Chaos City, they shot towards the depths of the Chaos City. During this process, the white-robed Marquis did not say anything. He only used his fastest speed to break through the void and shot towards his destination. Chapter 1730. In the endless chaos, there were many chaos gems. However, as more and more experts entered the chaos layer, the chaos gems were quickly discovered and used up. In the end, it was impossible to find chaos gems in ordinary places, let alone chaos gem ores. In order to find chaos gems, one had to go deep into the chaos layer. However, the deeper the chaos layer was, the more dangerous it was. Even the experts at the top of the holy leaderboard did not dare to go too deep. That was because they could not guarantee that they would not be able to come out alive. The chaos gem, ores that White Marquis mentioned, was discovered by an expert on the holy leaderboard by accident. It was in the depths of the chaos layer and was surrounded by powerful chaos beasts. Ordinary people did not dare to go near it. The expert on the holy leaderboard found it by accident. After Yu and the rest left the Chaos City, they appeared in a small city of the Chaos Sect and were teleported there. The reason for this was to keep it a secret. After all, although the Chaos Sect was powerful, there were other forces in the Chaos Layer that were not weaker than them. Moreover, it was a Chaos Gem, Ores. Once the news of the Chaos Gem, Ores, was leaked, the Chaos Sect would be besieged. After all, even a super force like the Chaos Sect needed a Chaos Gem, Ores. Swoosh! After several teleportations, Yu's group of 7 finally appeared in the middle of an endless mountain range. As mentioned earlier, there was land in the Chaos Layer. Moreover, the land was formed by the power of chaos and turned into soil and boulders. However, these things could not be absorbed directly. Ordinary people could not absorb them, but even Yu could not. The power of chaos had changed. Roar! As soon as the group stepped out of the teleportation formation, a shocking roar was heard from afar and the surrounding space trembled slightly. Guang's expression changed slightly, and even his face turned pale. Furthermore, Yu caught a fleeting glimpse of fear in the depths of his eyes. Don't worry. Although these chaos beasts are terrifying, the Chaos Sect has replicated layers of formations here. They can't break through the formations and enter here. White Marquis knew what Guang was worried about and finally said something. However, he soon led Yu forward. Hundreds of experts on the Saint rankings. Yu sensed the number of experts on the Saint rankings within the layers of formations. Even though the Primal Chaos Sect was a major force in the Primal Chaos Layer, this was still a huge lineup. From this, one could see how much the Primal Chaos Sect valued the Primal Chaos Crystal, Ores. Young Sect Master. Upon seeing White-Robe Marquis' arrival, the experts on the Saint ranking did not appear. Instead, they sent out their spiritual consciousness to greet him. As for Yu and Guang, those people's divine senses only swept past them and didn't continue to linger, because there was no need to. The people that their young sect master brought over were definitely trustworthy people. The White Marquis lightly nodded his head, then led Yu into a towering mountain that reached the clouds. In the beginning, the cave they entered was only a small one that could only fit one person. However, the deeper they went, the bigger the cave became. Eventually, it became a huge cave. Boom! All of a sudden, Yu and the rest opened up in front of them. Suddenly, there was a dazzling light that rushed over and blinded Yu and the rest. At the same time, an extremely pure primal chaos power rushed over. Looking over, he saw many fist-sized, black, translucent crystals in front of him. So many primal chaos gems. Guang couldn't help but exclaim when he saw the primal chaos gems that covered the sky. He stared at the primal chaos gems in a daze and was speechless for a long time. We haven't mined this primal chaos gem mine yet. As the project is too big, an ordinary rank 9 primal chaos ancestor sage can't even mine 1,000 pieces a day. We don't want to leak any information here. Hence, we plan to do it ourselves. There are 3 grades of primal chaos gems, from 1 to 3. Among them, primal chaos gems are the lowest grade while primal chaos gems are of the highest grade. 1 primal chaos gem can be exchanged for 1,000 primal chaos gems of the 3rd grade. According to our conservative estimation, this primal chaos gem mine has at least 100 million primal chaos gems of the 1st grade. 100 million primal chaos gems of the 1st grade. Hearing White-Robe Marquis' words, Guang almost fainted. This data was simply too terrifying. In other words, any piece of chaos crystal here could be used to buy his house. There were 100 million of these chaos gems, which was enough to buy a house like his. Previously, he had fought with his life on the line for a few hundred 3rd grade chaos gems. 100 million 1st grade chaos gems. Even in the primal chaos city, there were not many forces that could take out such an amount. Yu was not as bad as Guang. He actually did not value this kind of chaos crystal. 100 million was just a bunch of numbers. Murong Yu scanned it with his spiritual perception and discovered that the chaos crystal ore's size, color, and content were similar. It was indeed a first-grade chaos crystal Oregon, sir. How is it? If you're able to help me raise my strength, I will give you this chaos crystal Oregon. Furthermore, I can even hire you as an elder or protector. You will be able to enjoy the highest treatment in the chaos sect. At the same time, none of the conditions I promised before will change, the White Marquis said as he looked at Murong Yu. There was some anticipation in the depths of his eyes, but there was even more anxiety. Swoosh! Hearing what the White Marquis said, the people from the Chaos sect looked at Murong Yu in shock. The conditions were too high. If Murong Yu really agreed, his status in the Chaos sect would be similar to the young master, which was the White Marquis. The only person above him would be their young master. However, they were merely shocked and not displeased. Not to mention one chaos crystal, or even if there were 10 of them, it would not matter. The prerequisite was that he could cure their young master. Murong Yu was tempted again. It was not because of the chaos gems, but because of his status. If he joined the chaos sect, he would receive the help of many experts. It would only be beneficial to him. However, he was not confident that he could cure the White Marquis' soul. Hence, he did not say anything. He merely took a step forward and went deep into the chaos crystal Oregon. When Murong Yu arrived at the deepest part of the chaos crystal ore, his pupils dilated. That was because he saw something that he was very interested in. Endless primal chaos energy kept rushing in. Then it began to condense and purify, compress and compress. In the deepest part of the chaos crystal ore, there were some half-completed chaos gems. Murong Yu had always been curious about how these chaos gems were formed. Now, he finally knew. The so-called chaos gems were actually crystals formed after the chaos energy was purified and condensed to the extreme. The primal chaos energy in my body is extremely pure. Furthermore, the tree of life can devour the primal chaos energy at any time. Can I condense a primal chaos crystal like this? Murong Yu suddenly had this thought. After this thought appeared, Murong Yu was a little impulsive. He had the urge to test it out immediately. However, there were too many people here. If Murong Yu could really condense chaos gems, it would be too shocking. Suppressing the impulse in his heart, Murong Yu returned to the exit of the chaos crystal, or White Marquis. I really don't have the confidence to cure your problem. However, I will try. Great. Although Murong Yu said that, White Marquis was still ecstatic. Just by looking at how Murong Yu could tell where his problem was, White Marquis firmly believed that Murong Yu had the ability. Mister, this chaos crystal or belongs to you from today onwards. However, the chaos sect will still guard this place until you finish mining all these chaos gems. White Marquis' voice trembled. He was too excited and excited. Mister, when will we start mining? We will arrange for people to do it immediately. An expert on the saint ranking from the chaos sect walked up and said respectfully to Murong Yu, "Let's start now. You don't have to do it. I will do it myself." Murong Yu smiled faintly. Do it himself? White Marquis and the others were stunned. Although Murong Yu was powerful, there were so many chaos gems. When would he finish mining all of them? Especially White Marquis. He did not want to wait for such a long time. Just as White Marquis was thinking of how to persuade Murong Yu not to mine the chaos gems himself, he saw Murong Yu reach out his hand and grab the chaos gems. Crack, crack. After a series of cracking sounds, Murong Yu had already retracted his hand. More than 1,000 chaos gems? White Marquis and the others could not help but exclaim when they saw the chaos gems in Murong Yu's hand that were shining with a faint holy light. The amount that Murong Yu grabbed was equivalent to a rank 9 Chaos Ancestor Sage's mining in 1 or 2 days. However, this was only the strength of Murong Yu's grab. White Marquis and the others were instantly confused. However, Murong Yu only smiled faintly. The grab earlier was just a taste. This was the real mining. Hence, he reached out his hand for the second time. 50,000, 100,000. Perhaps Murong Yu's mining ability had increased. After a few consecutive grabs, he grabbed at least 100,000 chaos gems in one go. At this speed, Murong-Yu would not even need a day to completely mine the 100 million chaos gems. That was 100 million chaos gems. It was too illogical. Why was Murong-Yu able to grab the chaos gems so easily? Could it be that the chaos gems here were especially easy to collect? Thinking of this, White Marquis and the others also took action. However, very soon, the truth made their faces turn green. The most powerful among them only managed to grab a few dozen chaos gems each time. It was incomparable to Murong-Yu's 100,000 chaos gems each time. White Marquis and the others were very hurt. Chapter 1731. In less than a day, Murong-Yu kept all the chaos gems in the chaos gem mine into the Hichu Luoshu. Not a single one was left. White Marquis and the rest were dumbfounded. However, they were impressed by Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu's power was beyond their expectations. There were no more chaos gems. Perhaps the chaos gem mine could form a new chaos gem mine after many years. However, it had become a useless mine for the time being. However, White Robe Marquis and the others still set up many formations and restrictions to conceal the chaos gem mine. After all, it might become another chaos gem mine after many years. Everyone returned to Chaos City. Mister, this is your residence. Chaos Sect has paid for all your expenses. From today onwards, this manor will be your residence. White Marquis said to Murong-Yu with a smile as he pointed at the huge manor in front of them. What a huge manor! Looking at this incomparably huge manor, Hirue Guang felt a little dizzy. His small high-rise house, which was less than 10 square meters, cost 1,000 chaos gems. Then, how much would this manor, which covered an area of over 10,000 mu, cost? It would cost 100 million chaos gems. Moreover, such a huge place could not be bought even if one had the money. Only the Primal Chaos Sect was rich enough to afford such a good place. Mister, is this manor big enough? If it's not, I'll find a way to get you a bigger one. White Marquis was afraid that Murong-Yu would not agree, so he quickly asked. Murong-Yu nodded his head. It's enough. The manor was big enough for a small force, let alone a single person. Thus, everyone strode in. In the hall. White Marquis, I'll check your soul first before I think of a way. Murong-Yu gestured for White Marquis to sit on the ground as he began to help. White Marquis was overjoyed as he quickly sat on the ground with his legs crossed. Murong-Yu's divine thought and soul power had already entered White-Robed Marquis' soul space. In an instant, White-Robed Marquis' soul space had been enveloped. If it had been Pang Ran, he would not have been able to see anything unusual about the White Marquis' soul. However, as a soul saint, Murong-Yu usually did a lot of research on his own and other people's souls. At first glance, Murong-Yu discovered the flaw in the white-robed Marquis soul. How should he put it? If the white-robed Marquis soul was a skyscraper, then his 3 souls and 7 spirits were the 10 pillars that supported it. Each of the 10 load-bearing pillars was very important as they carried the entire building. However, the White Marquis building lacked the most important pillar, the heavenly soul. Therefore, this skyscraper could not continue to rise. If it continued to rise, it would cause the other 9 load-bearing pillars to bear even more pressure and collapse directly. Instead, it automatically protected his body and soul. Therefore, the white-robed Marquis' strength could not continue to increase. This was the self-consciousness of the soul that had sealed off all possibilities of increasing his strength. Moreover, because it had lost its heavenly soul, the white-robed Marquis skyscraper was much younger than other skyscrapers of the same age. This was the reason why Murong-Yu had said that he only had less than an era left in his lifespan. The other 2 souls and 7 spirits were fine. The white-robed Marquis only lacked his heavenly soul. Murong-Yu also discovered that his heavenly soul seemed to have been deliberately extracted by someone. This was difficult. If it was only his soul that was injured, Murong-Yu could still repair it and restore it. Murong Yu had absolute confidence that it would only restore it. However, he was not repairing it now. He was creating something out of nothing and directly creating a new heavenly soul for the white-robed Marquis. Every soul was an individual and was difficult to create. Perhaps there would be experts who would be able to create things and create souls. However, Murong Yu did not. Moreover, he dared to guarantee that even an honorable or a dominator did not have the ability to create souls. When Murong Yu became the chaos controller, he might be able to create things and souls. However, the white-robed Marquis would have died by then. After pondering for half a day, Murong Yu still could not think of a way to create the white-robed Marquis's heavenly soul out of nothing. Therefore, he told him the truth. "Sir, is there really no other way?" The white-robed Marquis looked at Murong Yu with an ashen face. His eyes were full of disappointment. Murong Yu knew that this was cruel, but he still nodded slightly. "Forget it. I already knew that this would be the result." The white-robed Marquis stood up, and a bright smile appeared on his face again. "Sir, although you can't cure me, my promise will not change. The Chaos Gems, the mansion, and your identity in the Chaos Sect are all valid. I'll take my leave first." As he spoke, the white-robed Marquis walked out of the mansion. Looking at the white-robed Marquis's lonely figure, Murong Yu hesitated for a moment. Finally, he said, "Actually, there's another way to restore your soul." However, hearing this, the white-robed Marquis suddenly stopped. Then he turned around and traversed through time and space in a single step. He appeared in front of Murong Yu. He looked at Murong Yu excitedly. "Sir, no matter what the condition is, as long as you can cure me, I'll agree to it." Murong Yu looked at the white-robed Marquis with an inexplicable smile. "You'll agree to any condition? Are you willing to be my slave?" The white-robed Marquis was stunned. He had thought of all possibilities. However, he had not thought of this possibility. Therefore, he was in a dilemma. Becoming Murong Yu's slave could mend his soul. In the future, he would become even more powerful and become a true immortal expert. However, he would lose his freedom. However, if he did not become Murong Yu's slave, not only would he lose his freedom, but he would also lose his life. Although freedom was precious, life was even more precious. "All right, if you can really cure my soul, I'll become your slave." The white-robed Marquis quickly made up his mind. He looked at Murong Yu with a determined expression. Murong Yu looked at the white-robed Marquis in shock. With a white-robed Marquis status, even if he did not fly into a rage when Murong Yu said that, he would definitely not agree to it. However, he did not expect this guy to agree to this condition. Moreover, he did not ask Murong Yu if he had any other conditions. "Sir, please control my soul now," the white-robed Marquis said respectfully to Murong Yu. However, he could not hide the excitement in the depths of his eyes. Murong Yu shook his head and laughed. "I do have a way to cure your soul. However, I need to control your soul. However, you don't have to make a decision in such a hurry. I suggest that you discuss it with your father first." Murong Yu did not seize the opportunity to control the white-robed Marquis soul. Once he controlled the white-robed Marquis soul, it would be equivalent to controlling the entire chaotic sect. There's no need to discuss it. If you can really cure the white-robed Marquis soul, he can become your slave. However, if you want to control the chaotic sect through him, you're making a big mistake. At this moment, a voice was heard in the manor. At the same time, a middle-aged man who looked similar to the white-robed Marquis broke through the void and stepped out. He then landed in front of Murong Yu and stood beside the white-robed Marquis. "Father!" The white-robed Marquis quickly bowed. This man was the leader of the chaotic sect, the father of the white-robed Marquis, Bai Wenru. Murong Yu looked over and realized that Bai Wenru was very powerful. He was at least in the top 10 of the holy leaderboard. However, Murong Yu did not see anyone with the surname Bai in the top 10 of the holy leaderboard. In other words, Bai Wenru was just his alias. No one knew what his real name was. Could this person be the third person in the top 10 of the holy leaderboard that little lowly mentioned? Murong Yu thought to himself as a smile appeared on his face. "I hope that you'll consider this carefully." After all, I have no choice but to control the white-robed Marquis soul. Instead of being unable to increase my strength and living for less than an era, I'd rather be your slave. Mister, there's no need to consider. I've made up my mind, the white-robed Marquis said before Bai Wenru could speak. Bai Wenru looked at the white-robed Marquis solemnly. After a long while, he looked at Murong Yu's face and said, "If that's the case, please control the white-robed Marquis soul. However, I like to make it clear that the chaotic sect is under my control. Don't even think of using the white-robed Marquis to control him. You can't use him to control or threaten me. If you're unable to repair the white-robed Marquis soul, I'll kill you myself one day and take away my son's freedom." Murong Yu smiled faintly and said, "If I wanted to control the chaotic sect, why would I need to control the white-robed Marquis? I'll just control you directly." Hearing this, Bai Wenru's eyes flashed with a terrifying light, but it disappeared in a flash. Bai Wenru knew that Murong Yu might really have the ability to do so. This was because he was still unable to see through Murong Yu. The white-robed Marquis soul is lacking a heavenly soul. After I control his soul, I'll transfer my soul energy into his soul and use my heavenly soul to slowly nourish his heavenly soul. However, this process will take a very long time. However, I'll try my best to repair his soul before his lifespan is exhausted. Murong Yu said to the white-robed Marquis and his son in a deep voice. This was the only way that Murong Yu could think of. However, in reality, there were many things that had to be done. It was not as simple as he made it sound. Immediately, the white-robed Marquis released his soul for Murong Yu to control. From then on, Murong Yu had an expert on the holy leaderboard as a slave. Moreover, this person's identity was extremely honorable. As long as he took a step forward, the entire chaotic layer would tremble. However, Murong Yu had never thought of controlling the chaotic sect through the white-robed Marquis. As he said, if he wanted to control the chaotic sect, he would have to control Bai Wenru directly. With his abilities, Bai Wenru should not be his opponent. Chapter 1732. White-Robe Marquis had become Murong Yu's slave. Other than Murong Yu and White-Robe Marquis, only White-Robe Marquis's father, the leader of chaotic sect, Bai Wenru knew about it. After all, it would have a huge impact. Once the news got out, the entire chaotic layer would be shaken. By then, it would have a huge impact on Murong Yu, White-Robe Marquis, and the entire chaotic sect. Therefore, the three of them did not spread the news. However, the news that Murong Yu had become chaotic sect's consecrator spread across the entire chaotic sect overnight. According to White-Robed Marquis, Murong Yu would become an elder and guardian of chaotic sect directly. However, Bai Wenru denied it right away. After all, there were many elders and guardians in chaotic sect. If Murong Yu became a protector or an elder, he wouldn't be considered special in the primal chaos sect. Therefore, Bai Wenru listed Murong Yu as chaotic sect consecrator. He was the first and the last one in history. Speaking of consecrator, it was much higher than the elders and guardians. After all, the elders and guardians had to do many things. However, consecrators did not have to do anything. They only had to enjoy the treatment that chaotic sect gave them. Moreover, it was the highest treatment. In other words, Murong Yu's position in chaotic sect was similar to the young leader, White-Robe Marquis. He was only below Bai Wenru. Murong Yu could be said to be able to cover the sky with one hand. In fact, Murong Yu's position was higher than White-Robe Marquis. That was because White-Robe Marquis was his slave. Many people were curious about Murong Yu's sudden appearance, but they did not dare to object. After all, chaotic sect was conquered by Bai Wenru alone. Not to mention that he was just appointing a consecrator. Even if he were to let someone else be the leader of chaotic sect, they could not say anything. In fact, not many people had seen Murong Yu before, much less heard of his name. They only knew that a mysterious expert had become a consecrator of the primal chaos sect. As for the experts on the saint rankings who had seen Murong Yu, Bai Wenru had sealed their memories of Murong Yu. This was beneficial to Murong Yu and the Primal Chaos sect. Baiwenru was not an idiot. If Murong Yu could really cure the White Robe Marquis, he would be willing to hand over the entire Primal Chaos sect to him, let alone a consecrator. Moreover, he also discovered that Murong Yu's strength was extremely strong, comparable to his own. With such an expert in the Primal Chaos sect, the Primal Chaos sect had definitely picked him up. Giving Murong Yu offerings was only a matter of mutual benefit. White Robe Marquis, in the future, I will not restrict you, and you do not need to be by my side. You can do whatever you want, as long as it's the same as before. Nurturing a heavenly soul is not something that can be rushed, Murong Yu said to Baiwenru after Baiwenru left. Yes, sir. White-robed Marquis bowed respectfully, then quickly left Murong Yu's manor. Hirue Guang, stay here and cultivate. I'll leave for a while, Murong Yu instructed Hirue Guang, then took a step forward and disappeared from where he was. In Hichu Luoshu, Murong Yu sat on the ground with his legs crossed. White-robed Marquis' matter cannot be rushed. Let's try to see if I can condense a chaos crystal. If I can condense primal chaos crystals. A smile appeared on Murong Yu's face. With a thought, Murong Yu stretched out his hand. Immediately after, a tremendous amount of extremely pure chaotic force surged out of his body and quickly gathered in his palm. At the same time, Murong Yu began to compress the energy. The chaos crystal was actually continuously compressing the chaotic energy, then turning the chaotic energy from a gaseous state into a solid state. Everyone understood the principle, but it was not easy to turn the energy from a gaseous state into a solid state. Bang! When Murong Yu condensed the energy in his palm to the extreme, the chaotic energy did not turn into a solid state. Instead, it exploded. Even though Murong Yu had been prepared for this, his palm was still blown to smithereens by the sudden explosion of power. After trying a few times in a row, they all ended in failure. There must be a problem. Murong Yu frowned slightly. He realized that the energy had exploded the moment it was about to turn into a solid state. The reason for the explosion was that the gap between the energy had been compressed to the extreme and could not be compressed any further. At this time, if Murong Yu continued to compress, the energy would explode. In fact, when it exploded, the gaseous energy could have turned into a solid state. However, it did not turn into a chaos crystal. Why? He thought of few possibilities, but they all failed in the end. In the end, Murong Yu took out another chaos crystal and studied it. Suddenly, Murong Yu's eyes lit up. I finally know. Not only are the shapes different between the gaseous and the solid, but their structures are also different. And it is because of their structures that the gap between the gaseous and the solid is created. Their molecular arrangements are different, just like the array arrangement in the sacred weapon. Different arrangements will result in different powers. After realizing this, Murong Yu nearly threw his head back and laughed maniacally. Therefore, Murong Yu continued to compress the chaotic energy. It's done. After a long time, Murong Yu laughed out loud. At this time, there was a black stone about half the size of a fist lying quietly in his palm. This was the chaos crystal that Murong Yu condensed. However, this chaos crystal was very different from the chaos crystal condensed by chaos itself. The appearance was definitely incomparable. Although the chaotic energy contained in it was pure, it was very little. It was the kind that no one would pick up even if it was thrown on the road. However, at least it was condensed successfully. Murong Yu believed that as long as he persevered, he would eventually condense a normal chaos crystal, or even a chaos crystal that was better than the normal chaos crystal. Therefore, Murong Yu continued. Piece after piece of chaos gems were condensed by him continuously. From the initial charcoal appearance, it gradually turned black and translucent. The size was also the same as the normal chaos crystal. The most important thing was that the chaotic energy contained in it was increasing. Unknowingly, a chaos crystal the size of a small mountain piled up beside Murong Yu. These were the chaos crystals that Murong Yu condensed. There were even many chaos crystals that had reached the level of first-class chaos crystal. However, at this time, Moronu frowned slightly. Could it be that first-class chaos crystal is the highest-level chaos crystal? Isn't there a chaos crystal that contains purer and more powerful chaotic energy? He continued to condense chaos crystal. The chaos crystal piled up beside him kept increasing. From the size of a small mountain, it kept growing and gradually became a huge mountain. In the end, it became a huge mountain that towered into the clouds. Phew, I finally succeeded. On this day, Moronu stopped condensing chaos crystal. Instead, he looked at the black, translucent chaos crystal that was the size of a fist in his palm and smiled. This chaos crystal was exactly the same as a first-class chaos crystal. However, the aura that was given out from it was at least twice that of a first-class chaos crystal, or even more. This chaos crystal was classified as a special class chaos crystal by Moronu. One piece was worth at least 10 first-class chaos crystals. Let's condense some for later use. Moronu rested for a while. After sorting out his experience, he started to condense special class chaos crystal. Time flowed like water. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. 100 million special class chaos crystals. Moronu looked at the special class chaos crystal that was piled up like a mountain, and he was all smiles. Beside the mountain of chaos crystal, there was an even bigger mountain. Those were first class, second class, and third class chaos crystals. They were condensed by Moronu previously. Moreover, when he first started to condense chaos crystals, Moronu couldn't condense special class chaos crystals with a 100% success rate. Among the 3 chaos crystals, he could only condense 1 special class chaos crystal, while the other 2 were first class chaos crystals. In other words, Moronu had already condensed a few 100 million chaos crystals in a year's time. It was even more terrifying than a chaos crystal mine. If this matter were to spread, the entire chaos layer would go crazy over it. By then, Moronu would become the public enemy of the entire chaos layer. He might even attract the attention of an honorable. However, would Moronu be so silly to reveal it? As the saying goes, one can make a fortune without making a sound. It's time to go and meet St. Hall. With a thought, Moronu left Hichu Luoshu and appeared in his manor in Chaos City. Hirue Guang, this is my reward for you. Looking at Hirue Guang, who came after hearing the news, Moronu threw him a storage ring. Hirue Guang took it and almost fainted when he saw it, because there were a total of 10,000 first-class chaos crystals in it. In other words, it was equivalent to 10 million third-class chaos crystals. Previously, he fought with his life on the line for a few hundred third-class chaos crystals, but Moronu just gave him 10 million? How could this not make him faint from happiness? Following such a master, it was worth it even if he had to be a dog. Moreover, following Moronu didn't require him to be a dog. In fact, Moronu didn't even treat him as a slave. In this life, even if I die, I won't betray Master. Hirue Guang was determined in his heart. Oh yes, Master, recently I found out that there are many people spying outside the manor, and those people are hostile. However, as they are more powerful than me, I didn't find any traces of them. However, I didn't alert the people from Chaotic Sect. After the excitement, Hirue Guang immediately reported this to Moronu. This was what Moronu had instructed him to do previously. Well done. Moronu patted Hirue Guang's shoulder, which made Hirue Guang feel flattered. If the chaos crystals were alerted, even if the people from St. Hall weren't killed, they wouldn't dare to appear nearby. That was a force that Moronu had already claimed as his own. He definitely didn't want St. Hall to suffer any losses. Chapter 1733. Moronu left Primal Chaos City alone and walked into the depths of Primal Chaos City. As expected, Moronu realized that someone was following him the moment he stepped out. The feeling was very subtle. If not for Moronu's proficiency in tracking and counter-tracking, he would not have been able to discover those people who were following him. However, Although those people's concealment and tracking abilities were extremely strong, they were not weak at all. However, it was completely displayed in front of Murong-Yu's eyes. At this moment, Murong-Yu was not walking on the same path that he had come from. Therefore, at the beginning, there were people who kept appearing in this direction. But gradually, Murong-Yu was the only one left. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the blink of an eye, 4 people surrounded Murong-Yu from different directions. All of them were masked in black and stared at Murong-Yu fiercely. All of them were powerhouses on the holy rankings. Moreover, their rankings on the holy rankings were not low. Murong-Yu glanced at them and realized that the weakest of the 4 people was at least 70,000 on the holy rankings. Moreover, Murong-Yu knew that other than these 4 people, there was an even stronger powerhouse watching him from behind. These people should be from the Saint Execution Hall. Thinking of his plan, Murong-Yu could not help but laugh in his heart. However, there was a nervous look on his face. In fact, there was even a flash of fear in the depths of his eyes. As for Murong-Yu's actions, they didn't miss a single detail from the 4 of them. Immediately, they sneered in their hearts. If they were in his shoes, they would also be nervous and afraid. They had no choice because the 4 of them were much stronger than Murong-Yu. Sensing their thoughts, Murong-Yu could not help but laugh in his heart. These fellows were indeed pretty strong. However, Murong-Yu could kill tens of thousands of them with a single slap. However, Murong-Yu was not playing the role of his actual body. Instead, he was a genius who was not rank high on the holy rankings. Who are you? Why are you blocking my path? Murong-Yu looked at the 4 people in front of him with vigilance. At the same time, he had already raised his strength to the limit. We're from the Saint Execution Hall. Brat, our Saint Execution Hall has invited you in. Be obedient and surrender, one of the black-robed men said as he looked at Murong-Yu mockingly. Murong-Yu's expression changed drastically, and he couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. You're from the Saint Hall? Specialized in killing genius saints? Why are you attacking me? As he spoke, Murong-Yu took a step forward, smashing through the void in an attempt to escape. During this process, he even locked onto one of the black-clothed men with a punch and then violently attacked. You're overestimating yourself. A black-clothed man sneered and slammed his palm down. Bang! Murong-Yu was slammed to the ground, and his eyes rolled back as he fainted. At this moment, one of the black-clothed men reached out and grabbed Murong-Yu. Then, the 4 of them spread out and flew into the depths of the chaos. However, they never thought that Murong-Yu, who had been knocked unconscious and sealed by them, was only faking it. Murong-Yu had no choice but to resort to this method in order to find out the location of the Hallowed Hall's headquarters and subdue the entire Hallowed Hall. In reality, it was very simple for Murong-Yu to find out where the Saint Execution Hall was. All he had to do was take down these people and read their memories. If it was an ordinary organization, Murong-Yu would have no problem doing this. He didn't even need to waste time and effort. However, his target was the Saint Execution Hall. The Saint Execution Hall was probably the most powerful assassin organization in the entire holy world. This organization was very secretive. Ordinary assassins didn't even know where their headquarters were. Only a few core members knew where it was. Outsiders didn't know who the core members of the Saint Execution Hall were. Even ordinary assassins didn't know who the core members were. Therefore, unless Murong-Yu controlled the core members, he wouldn't know where the Saint Execution Hall's headquarters were. However, even if Murong-Yu controlled the core members, he wouldn't know where the headquarters were. This was because he couldn't read the memories of any of the assassins. Their memories had been sealed by the experts of the Saint Execution Hall. In particular, their memories of the Saint Execution Hall's headquarters were sealed tightly. Once an external force tried to read their memories, that force would be automatically erased. Even the soul of the person whose memories were read would be burned. This was the experience of the predecessors. Otherwise, even though the Saint Execution Hall was powerful, not every assassin was powerful. After countless years, there were a few assassins who were captured. However, outsiders didn't know where the Saint Execution Hall's headquarters were because of this. As a result, Muronyu had no choice but to use this method. Some parts of the chaotic layer were exactly the same as the holy world below. However, the difference was that the chaotic layer was divided into huge continents. Some continents were connected to each other, but some continents were separated by vast expanses of the chaotic layer. Usually, these places were the most dangerous places. Muronyu, who was pretending to be unconscious, felt himself constantly passing through the depths of the chaotic layer. After passing through various teleportation formations, he finally stopped half a month later. Then, Muronyu woke up. After waking up, Muronyu looked at his surroundings. With a blank expression, he shouted, "Where are we?" Then, as if he had just seen the four black-clothed men, he immediately became furious. At the same time, without saying a word, he raised his fist and viciously punched the nearest black-clothed man. "Stop if you don't want to die. Otherwise, I'll kill you immediately." The black-clothed man who was being attacked glared at Muronyu. At the same time, his incomparably powerful aura pressed down on Muronyu's body like raging waves. Thud, thud, thud. Muronyu's face was filled with shock as he was forced to retreat from the pressure. However, he didn't make a move in the end. If he overdid it, it wouldn't be fun if he exposed himself. "I'll take him to see the leader." The black-clothed man coldly snorted as he stretched out his hand and grabbed Muronyu. Then, he took to the air and flew forward. This was a huge valley. There were a few buildings scattered around the valley. This was the Saint Execution Hall's branch. Muronyu was confused. There were less than 100 people in the valley. Moreover, none of them were very powerful. There were only 2 or 3 ninth-stage chaotic ancestral saints, let alone those on the saint rankings. However, Muronyu soon understood. The black-clothed man brought him into an inconspicuous hall. Then, he disappeared from the hall. When Muronyu reappeared, he was already in an incomparably huge city. Although it was far from the scale of the Primal Chaos City, it was not inferior to some of the big cities of the human race in the Holy World. This was a huge underground city. The sky was gray. There was an artificial sun emitting a dazzling light that enveloped the entire city. The city was huge and bustling. Just like any other city, there were restaurants, inns, and so on. Muronyu roughly estimated that there were at least 1 million people in the city. Moreover, these people were very powerful. However, other than the saint rankings and 9th stage chaotic ancestral saints, there were also other experts. These should be the geniuses that the Saint Execution Hall had captured from various places. At this time, other than a few people, most of them were training. They were trained to be assassins by the Saint Execution Hall. The best way to become an assassin was to train from a young age. As a result, Muronyu saw many young saints with decent aptitudes. This was the branch of the Saint Execution Hall, where assassins were trained. Soon, Muronyu was brought to a place that looked like the city lord's mansion. This should be where the Saint Execution Hall's branch leader worked. As soon as Muronyu appeared, a black-clothed man with a mask on his face appeared on the main seat in the hall. "Branch leader, this is Yu Rongmu. I've been ordered to get him." The black-clothed man bowed respectfully to the branch leader and quickly left. Yu Rongmu was naturally Muronyu's alias. He just reversed his name and changed some of the words. Boom. After the black-clothed assassin left the hall, the black-clothed branch master looked at Muronyu. At the same time, his powerful aura enveloped Muronyu. Moreover, his divine consciousness had already entered Muronyu's body. Muronyu was already prepared for this. His physical body, meridians, and everything else had been changed by him. As long as one's strength did not exceed his by too much, one would not be able to notice the difference in his physical body. However, he still managed to block it for a while, and then pretended that he could not stop the black-clothed branch leader's divine consciousness from entering his body. During this process, Muronyu's face turned pale, and he staggered backward. His eyes were also filled with shock as he looked at the black-clothed branch leader. His physical body is not bad. A rank 3 chaotic ancestor sage has the strength of an expert on the sage ranking. Our branch can't nurture such a person. We can only send him to the headquarters. The branch leader thought for a while and finally muttered to himself. Hearing the black-clothed branch leader's words, Murong Yu was secretly delighted. He had thought that it would take a few more days before he could reach the headquarters. He might not even be able to reach the Saint Execution Hall's headquarters. He did not expect to be able to go there now. Just as Murong Yu was rejoicing, the branch leader had already slapped Murong Yu's head and knocked him out. This made Murong Yu grit his teeth. He swore that once he took control of the Saint Execution Hall, he would definitely teach these people a lesson. However, for the sake of the Saint Execution Hall, he had to endure it. While Murong Yu was pretending to be unconscious, the branch leader had already grabbed Murong Yu. Then, he took a step forward and disappeared from the hall. He must have gone to the headquarters of the Saint Execution Hall. Seeing how eager he was, he must have received great benefits by offering such a genius to the headquarters of the Saint Execution Hall. Chapter 1734. There was a teleportation formation between the Sacred Hall headquarters and the branch. It was convenient for them to communicate with one another. Of course, in the branch, only the branch leader had the right to know where the teleportation formation was. Even in the headquarters, not many people knew where the teleportation formation was. The Holy Execution Hall's branch leader thought that Murong Yu had fainted from his slap. Thus, he led Murong Yu away from the other assassins in the branch and stealthily entered the transportation array to teleport back to their base. Unbeknownst to her, Murong Yu had already seen through the transportation array. However, the teleportation formation was of no use to Murong Yu. Once he controlled the entire Sacred Hall, Murong Yu would not only know about the teleportation formation. After exiting the teleportation formation, Murong Yu realized that he had arrived in a large city. However, this city was different from the Saint Execution Hall's branch that he had been to before. That branch was an underground city. It was deep underground in the Chaos Layer. However, the Sacred Hall headquarters was located high up in the Chaos Layer. There were no walls in the city. This was because the walls were made of chaos energy. Outside the city, there were countless chaos gems. It was so dark that one could not even see their fingers. From afar, Murong Yu could even feel the dangerous aura coming from the depths of the chaos. To be able to make Murong Yu feel this dangerous aura, it meant that there was something in the chaos that could threaten Murong Yu's life. Perhaps it was a sage or a chaos beast. Or perhaps there was an unknown danger in the depths of the chaos. Murong Yu guessed that the Sacred Hall headquarters was somewhere in the depths of the chaos. Usually, very few people would come to such a place. This was because if one was not very strong, they would not be able to come here. They would have been swallowed by the endless danger. Even if the headquarters were leaked, the Sacred Hall had nothing to fear. This was because no one could fight their way here. It could be said that the Sacred Hall headquarters was very safe. It was much safer than the Chaos City. Without even using his divine sense, Murong Yu only needed to open his eyes slightly to see the appearance of the entire city. In addition to the structure of the city, Murong Yu also discovered that there were thousands of extremely strong and dazzling lights here. These people were all experts on the Saint rankings. Of course, other than the experts on the Saint rankings, there were many other saints. However, those below the 9th level of the primal chaos ancestor, Saint Realm, weren't considered assassins. They were just future assassins groomed by the Hall of Saint Execution. Thousands of experts on the Saint rankings. Moreover, this didn't include the other branch leaders and the assassins who were out on missions. Murong Yu estimated that there were at least 10,000 experts on the Holy ranking in the Holy Execution Hall. 10,000 experts on the Saint rankings. One had to know that there were only 180,000 people on the Saint rankings. Even including the experts who had been kicked off the Saint rankings and were once on the Saint rankings, there were less than 200,000 experts on the Saint rankings in the entire Saints world. Just the Saint Execution Hall alone accounted for 1/20th of the total. This number was extremely frightening. With such strength, dominating the entire primal chaos layer was only a matter of time. Once they dominated the chaotic layer, they would control the entire Saints world. Of course, this was only if the sovereigns and sovereigns didn't appear. However, the sovereigns had been missing for many years. It was unknown whether they were still alive. However, Muronyu was certain that there were sovereigns in the saint's world. This was because he had almost been killed by one of them. In the blink of an eye, Muronyu was brought to one of the highest halls in the city by the branch master. The minimum requirement to enter this hall was that one had to be at least the branch leader. It seemed that they had already been notified. When the branch leader entered the main hall, there were already dozens of people gathered in the main hall. These people were the core members of the sacred hall. The hall master of the sacred hall sat on the main seat, his eyes flashing as he looked at Muronyu, who was still pretending to be unconscious. Everyone else was also looking at Muronyu. The branch master slapped Muronyu back to his senses. As soon as he woke up, Muronyu leapt to his feet. At the same time, his expression changed drastically. Swish! Muronyu took a step forward, about to fly out of the hall. However, at this moment, several terrifying presences descended from the sky, crushing down on Muronyu. Plop! Muronyu was directly pressed to the ground. In the next moment, several dozen strands of consciousness burrowed into his body like poisonous snakes, beginning to inspect his body and soul. On the surface, Muronyu was extremely furious and terrified. But in reality, he was sneering in his heart. These people were powerful, but it was impossible for them to see through his disguise. While everyone was sizing up Muronyu, he was also looking at the core members of the Saint Execution Hall. However, what made him speechless was that these people all looked the same. They were dressed in black, and their faces were covered with black cloth. Only a pair of shining eyes could be seen. Moreover, these people were all in human form. Ordinary people would not be able to recognize their identities or their races just by looking at them. However, Muronyu immediately saw through their disguises. Among the people present, there were experts from the Dragon Clan, the Phoenix Clan, the Demon Clan, and many other races. Moreover, Muronyu was certain that the branch leader of the Sacred Hall was not a human, nor was he from the Dragon Clan, the Phoenix Clan, or the Demon Clan that he had seen before. He should be an expert from one of the sacred clans. However, Muronyu did not recognize him. After a long while, the branch leader of the Sacred Hall, who had been sitting on the main seat, suddenly said in a deep voice, "I want this person. Do you have any objections?" As soon as he said that, Muronyu was stunned. The other experts on the saint ranking in the hall were also stunned. Then, someone said in a muffled voice, "Branch leader, aren't you too shameless? Why are you always the one who takes the first pick when they send in the most talented people? Aren't you bullying us because we're old and useless?" "That's right. How can you be so shameless? Although we're not as strong as you, our disciples have always been stronger than you," another black-robed man said in a deep voice. Oomph. The branch leader of the Sacred Hall could not help but snort when he heard what the black-robed man said. Muronyu also noticed a hint of depression in the branch leader's eyes. What Muronyu did not know was that there was a very strange phenomenon in the Sacred Hall. In terms of strength, assassination, and other aspects, the branch leader of the Sacred Hall was definitely stronger than any of the experts in the Sacred Hall. However, his disciples were mediocre in all aspects. Most importantly, his disciples were all extremely talented people. For example, someone like Muronyu, who was extremely talented, was taken away by the branch leader as soon as he was sent in. The other disciples could only choose from others. This made the others unhappy. However, their disciples were far more outstanding than the disciples of the Hall Master of the Holy Execution Hall. This made them feel a little proud, even though they were depressed. However, everyone wanted a talented disciple. For example, if Muronyu was given to them to train, his future achievements would definitely surpass those of the branch leader. Therefore, every time a talented person was sent in, they would fight to the death. What? You don't agree? The branch leader of the Sacred Hall was a little unhappy. Of course we don't agree. Isn't it a waste to give such a good seedling to you, branch leader? Brothers, don't you agree? A black-robed man chuckled and stood up. He did not care about the branch leader of the Sacred Hall at all. The others also started to jeer. Looking at them, Muronyu could not help but think of Shenzhen, whom he led. This scene was very familiar. It reminded him of when he bullied Shenzhen. How dare you? The branch leader of the Sacred Hall was furious. Veins popped out on his face as he looked at the other black-robed men with murderous intent. He roared, "So what if you don't agree? I want this person. If you are so capable, let's go out and train." The black-robed men staggered and looked at the branch leader speechlessly. "Shameless person, can you not use this move every time? You know we are no match for you." The black-robed men were helpless. In terms of strength, they were no match for the branch leader of the Sacred Hall. Moreover, the branch leader of the Sacred Hall was extremely shameless. In battle, he dared to use all kinds of methods. Every time, he defeated the other black-robed men with a dirty move. This made the black-robed men even more speechless. He, the branch leader of the Sacred Hall, chuckled. "Since that is the case, you can go back to where you came from. From now on, this person will be my disciple. You can't have any ideas about him, but you have to train with me first. Only a fool would train with you." One of the black-robed men glared at the branch leader of the Sacred Hall and turned to leave. The others also left the main hall. At that moment, the branch leader of the Sacred Hall looked at the stunned Murong Yu and laughed. "Kid, are you envious? You don't have to be. Soon, I will pass the position of the branch leader of the Sacred Hall to you. When that time comes, you could be just as awesome." Thud! The sound of something heavy falling to the ground could be heard. Murong Yu looked in the direction of the sound and saw a black-robed man crawling up from the ground and leaving pathetically. Other than that person, the other black-robed men all had strange expressions on their faces. "I will be a fool to believe you. Every time you take someone in, you say this to them. You have so many disciples. Why don't I see any of them becoming branch leaders?" One of the black-robed men angrily exposed the branch leader of the Sacred Hall's lie and left angrily. "Isn't it because they are not as strong as me? Otherwise, I would have passed the position to them a long time ago." The branch leader of the Sacred Hall said unhappily. Then, he looked at Murong Yu with shining eyes. When Murong Yu saw the affectionate gaze, he couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. He couldn't help but take a step back. "Bastard, what is the meaning of this?" The branch leader of the Sacred Hall was annoyed, and he slapped Murong Yu. Murong Yu couldn't help but take a step forward and dodge the branch leader's attack. However, he regretted at the moment he dodged the branch leader's attack. Wasn't he exposed? Chapter 1735. It's over. I've been exposed. Murong Yu was speechless after he dodged the Hall Master's attack. Zhang Xian turned around and saw the Hall Master of the Holy Execution Hall. Should I take this opportunity to take him down? Murong Yu thought to himself. Since he had been exposed, it was impossible for him to continue pretending. Why not take this opportunity to take down the Hall Master? Otherwise, Murong Yu would be in trouble when the other experts on the holy rankings arrived. Ha ha! Just as Murong Yu was considering whether he should attack, the Hall Master burst out laughing. "Good lad, you're quite strong to be able to dodge my attack. I like to see what level you've reached." Before he could finish his sentence, the Hall Master took a step forward. Once again, he stretched out his hand, shattering the void as he ruthlessly grabbed at Murong Yu. A glint flashed across the depths of Murong Yu's eyes. Not only did he not retreat, he even took a step forward and threw out a punch. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Murong Yu's and Li Wuyo's hands collided in the air. After a loud explosion, both of them were sent flying. At the same time, both of them looked depressed. "Good lad, who are you? Why did you sneak into the Holy Execution Hall?" The Hall Master looked at Murong Yu in shock. Although both of them had only attacked to test each other's strength, the Hall Master realized that Murong Yu was extremely powerful. At the very least, he was on par with him. In fact, the Hall Master of the Holy Execution Hall could even sense a dangerous aura coming from Murong Yu. In other words, Murong Yu was a threat to his life. He might even be stronger than him. He was shocked. Murong Yu was equally shocked. The Hall Master was definitely one of the top 10 experts on the holy rankings. However, he still did not know who this guy was. However, Murong Yu was sure that he was not one of the top 2 experts on the holy rankings. If that was the case, then this person would be a super existence ranked 5th to 9th on the saint rankings. Just a nobody, Murong smiled faintly, then took a step forward and appeared in front of the main seat in the hall. Then he sat down on the ground. The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall raised an eyebrow. That was his seat. Other than him, no one else had ever sat on it. However, Murong had the ability to do so. And nobody? The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall was speechless. With such strength, how could he be an unknown character? He had already determined that Murong was in the top 10 of the saint rankings, an existence that was on equal footing with him. Indeed, I'm just a nobody. A puny ant ranked 70,000 on the saint rankings is far from comparable to you guys who are ranked in the top 10 of the saint rankings. Murong reclined on his seat and said indifferently. There was no killing intent or enmity in his tone. However, he was still quite satisfied because the seat was quite comfortable. The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall sneered. Since when did a person ranked 70,000 on the saint rankings have such terrifying strength? Wasn't he trying to humiliate him? There was no way he would believe that. Mu, why don't you read it in reverse? Murong smiled. No one knew what he was up to. Murong? 70,000 on the saint rankings? The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall frowned. Although he knew that Murong was an alias, his name wasn't on the saint rankings. However, it was normal for such a situation to occur. Experts on the saint rankings usually didn't use their names when they ventured outside, unless they were very famous and would be recognized wherever they went. Otherwise, if they revealed their identity, wouldn't they be showing off their strength to others? Moreover, most factions would have information about experts on the saint rankings. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will win 100 battles. If others knew about you, but you didn't know about others, you would definitely be at a disadvantage if you fought. Therefore, people like the White Robe Marquis's father wouldn't reveal their real names. In the eyes of the hall master of the Holy Execution Hall, Murong was such a person. 70,000 on the saint rankings, Murong? The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall suddenly exclaimed. Then, he looked at Murong with a horrified expression. Although Murong had only arrived in the Chaos Layer not long ago, he was extremely famous in the Saints' world, the Alliance Master of the Human Race Alliance. In the past year, other than the factions controlled by the 8 Great Sacred Grounds, all the factions of the human race had joined the Human Race Alliance. Even one of the 9 Great Sacred Grounds, the Purple Thunder Hall, had announced that they had joined the Human Race Alliance and became a part of it. With Murong's identity and his chaotic celestial body physique, his name had shaken the entire Saints' world. He was even more famous than the Hall Master of the Holy Execution Hall. Of course, the Saints' world and the Chaos Layer were 2 different worlds. People in the Chaos Layer looked down on people from the Saints' world. Most people in the Saints' world didn't know about the existence of the Chaos Layer. However, as the leader of the strongest assassination organization in the Saints' world, the Hall Master of the Holy Execution Hall had once collected information on Murong. He was rather interested in Murong. However, due to the laws of the Chaos Layer, he didn't take action directly. Otherwise, he would have sent people to kidnap Murong long ago. However, Murong was still kidnapped in the end. In other words, Murong was kidnapped on purpose. The Hall Master of the Holy Execution Hall didn't believe that a few ordinary experts on the Saint rankings could defeat Murong and kidnap him. In that case, what was Murong's reason for coming here? Did he want to take over the Holy Execution Hall? This was the first thought that appeared in the Hall Master of the Holy Execution Hall, and it grew stronger with each passing moment. Murong, have you taken a liking to my Holy Execution Hall? After thinking about this, the Hall Master of the Holy Execution Hall wasn't worried at all, perhaps because of his strength. As he spoke, he sat down on a chair by the side. In the end, he crossed his legs and looked at Murong with an indescribable smile. How shameless. Murong was speechless. It seemed like those people were right. This guy was shameless. He didn't care about his identity. Yes, he was much more shameless than him. So, are you interested in giving the Holy Execution Hall to me? Murong looked at the Hall Master of the Holy Execution Hall with a smile. What do you mean? If you're interested, You can take it. Plop. Murong Yu's figure staggered and nearly fell off his seat. This was because he didn't feel like the hall master of the Holy Execution Hall was joking. This guy seemed to be telling the truth. Isn't it strange? You don't dare to believe it? To be honest, I don't dare to believe it either. However, I'm telling the truth. If you really want to kill the Holy Execution Hall, I can give it to you now. The hall master of the saintly execution hall spoke in a solemn tone as he looked at Murong Yu with sincerity. Murong Yu was stunned. This guy couldn't be telling the truth, right? If he was telling the truth, why would he be so generous? If Murong Yu was in his shoes, he would definitely fight to the death if someone tried to steal his shenzhen. Damn it, I don't dare to believe it. The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall suddenly stood up and cursed angrily. Then, he sat down and looked at Murong Yu calmly. Murong Yu didn't understand. In the end, he could only ask, is there something wrong with your brain? You're the one with a brain. Your entire family has a brain. The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall scolded Murong Yu without a care for his image. As he spoke, he raised his hand and tossed an item to Murong Yu. Murong Yu took it and examined it, only to discover that it was a soul. The word execution was carved on the front. The word holy was carved on the back. This is the identity token of the hall master of the Holy Execution Hall. With this token, you can command all the assassins in the Holy Execution Hall. Anyone who disobeys will be killed. The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall seemed to heave a sigh of relief. However, Murong Yu was even more confused. This guy is so generous. Is he plotting something? Don't worry, I won't harm you. I'm not plotting anything. From now on, you're the hall master of the Holy Execution Hall. Everyone in the Holy Execution Hall will listen to your orders. That includes me. The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall said firmly. Murong Yu felt dizzy. You better give me a clear explanation. What's going on? Although I want to control the Holy Execution Hall, I don't want it to be like this. Are you interested in hearing about me and the Holy Execution Hall? The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall didn't answer. Instead, he asked a question that didn't seem to have anything to do with him. Murong Yu nodded. He had a feeling that the hall master of the Holy Execution Hall would slowly tell him all his questions. A long time ago. I don't remember exactly when. Anyway, it was when I was young. Back then, I was young and ignorant. In the saint's world, I was just an ordinary person. My parents were just ordinary saints. I didn't have any background. Suddenly, an old man appeared before me one day. He helped me refine my meridians. At the same time, he gave me many resources and the best cultivation methods in the saint's world. He told me to cultivate to the saint ranking as quickly as possible and establish the Holy Execution Hall in the Chaos Layer. Of course, back then, I didn't know about the saint ranking or the Chaos Layer. Those memories had already been sealed. It was only when I broke through to the saint ranking that the seal was slowly unsealed. Back then, I just continued to raise my cultivation. Finally, when I reached the saint rankings, all of those memories were unsealed. Only then did I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to continue cultivating and establish the Holy Execution Hall. When he reached this point, Murong Yu could feel the hall master of the Holy Execution Hall laugh bitterly. The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall only paused slightly. He glanced at Murong Yu before continuing. You must be curious. Who is that old man? Why did he want me to establish the Holy Execution Hall? I've only seen that old man once. Moreover, I didn't establish the Holy Execution Hall for him. That old man even threatened me. If I didn't establish the Holy Execution Hall as the strongest force in the saint's world, he would personally kill me. Madhurf asterisk Kerr. Don't wait until I'm stronger than that old man. Otherwise, I'll kill him with a single slap. Under that old man's pressure, I was cautious and conscientious. I didn't dare to relax in the slightest. I was afraid that old man would kill me with a single slap. Do you know why that old man wanted me to establish the Holy Execution Hall? It's because of you. The hall master of the Holy Execution Hall looked at Murong Yu with a relaxed expression. Chapter 1736. Plop. Finally, Muronyu couldn't sit still any longer and was shaken off from his seat. Are you kidding? I don't even know where you were when you were young. Muronyu crawled to his feet and looked at the Hall Master strangely. This guy was too good at Bullsh Ting. The Hall Master shook his head. I'm not Bullsh Ting. I'm telling the truth. Are you Muronyu? Did you ascend from a cultivation world called Huaxia? Muronyu rolled his eyes. His information wasn't a secret. All he had to do was ask around to find out. Even if this guy wanted to Bullsh T, he had to Bullsh T. The Hall Master looked at Muronyu with a trace of a smile in his eyes. Muronyu, I know you don't believe me. I don't believe you either. But this is the truth. You can choose not to believe me, but I've already handed the Hall Master to you. Remember, the Hall Master only recognizes the token, not the person. If your token has been snatched away, then I'm sorry to say that. The Hall Master might be taken away. Muronyu looked at the Hall Master with a grave expression. After a long while, he finally confirmed that the Hall Master wasn't talking nonsense, but was speaking the truth. In fact, the Hall Master of the Sage Execution Hall had even opened up his mind for Muronyu to read. Muronyu didn't read it. If the Hall Master dared to do so, it meant that he was telling the truth. But if the Hall Master was telling the truth, then who was that little old man? Did he already know about Yi Futian's existence countless years ago? And he even raised the Hall Master and handed it over to Yi Futian? What did this mean? Muronyu fell silent. He felt a strong sense of conspiracy from these things. After thinking for a while, Muronyu still couldn't figure it out. He looked at the Hall Master and asked, "What else did that little old man want from you?" The Hall Master shook his head. "He only wanted me to establish the Hall Master and help you unify the holy world. Then you could become a ruler." Become a ruler? Muronyu sneered. That old man had great ambitions, but why was it so easy to become a ruler? One had to know that there was only one sovereign in the entire sacred world. As long as the current sovereign of the heavens didn't die, Muronyu wouldn't be able to become the sovereign. As for wanting to kill a hegemon, it wasn't that it was impossible, but that it was extremely difficult. This was because the current sovereign of the heavens had killed the previous sovereign to become the sovereign of the holy world. Although Muronyu's future achievements would be greater than the ruler's, it wasn't as if he could become the chaos controller just by saying so. What do you plan to do? Muronyu looked at Saint Hall. He was at a loss. This matter was too sudden and too strange. What else can we do? He commanded the army and unified the Saint's world. Kill anyone who dares to disobey, the Hall Master of the Saint Execution Hall said with a murderous aura. At this moment, he finally displayed his dominance and ferocity as the Hall Master of the Holy Execution Hall. Muronyu frowned slightly. Although the Saint Execution Hall was powerful, there was an unwritten rule in the Chaos Layer that organizations of the Chaos Layer couldn't interfere with the affairs of the Saint's world. Moreover, the assassins of the Saint Execution Hall came from various races of the Saint's world. Would they help Muronyu conquer their own race? Moreover, although the Saint Execution Hall was powerful, they hadn't reached the level of an overlord in the Chaos Layer. Once they were exposed, they would probably be attacked by countless experts. When that happened, those people might fly into a rage out of humiliation. They might even take Muronyu's Shenzhen into consideration. At that time, if they were to erupt, even the great alliance of humans would be wiped out. As a result, they had to be extremely careful. After all, it was very easy for them to be wiped out. Then what do we do? The Hall Master of the Saint Execution Hall was at a loss for words. He only asked a question in return. He wasn't the Hall Master of the Saint Execution Hall now, and he wasn't the one who wanted to unify the Saint's world. He was only there to support, so he couldn't be bothered to think about it. He'd leave it all to Muronyu to deal with. Muronyu rubbed his temples. He was having a headache. His original plan was to subdue the Saint Execution Hall for his own use. But now that he had subdued them without much effort, he was even more troubled than before. Who was that old man? Why was he targeting him? Muronyu couldn't get to the bottom of this matter. It was like a thorn in his heart, causing him to feel restless. Muronyu, I don't think that old man has any ill intentions towards you. After all, he's given you such a large organization. He even wants us to help you unify the Saint's world and become the Overlord. He shouldn't have any ill intentions. Moreover, even if he did, you'll just have to deal with whatever comes your way. That old man is probably already dead. So, what's the point of worrying about all this? His words were like a wake-up call. That's right. Now that he suddenly had such a powerful organization, he could just use it. Who cared what it was? There is a saying that there was no avoiding disaster. He would just have to deal with whatever came his way. After thinking this through, Murong-Yu relaxed. Then, he looked at the hall master of the Saint Execution Hall and said, "Stop being so mysterious. Show me your true face." "My name is Xian Junhua. I'm ranked 5th on the Saint rankings." Xian Junhua laughed and took off the black mask on his face. Thus, a devilishly handsome face appeared in Murong-Yu's line of sight. Devilishly handsome. However, no matter how Murong-Yu looked at it, he couldn't help but feel that this fellow was shameless. Although he was handsome, he was obviously a shameless person, 5th on the Saint rankings. If I take out the Xinyuan sword, he probably won't be a match for me, Murong-Yu thought to himself. At the same time, his face began to change. Finally, he took on his original appearance. In reality, after knowing Murong-Yu's identity, Xian Junhua already knew what Murong-Yu looked like. After all, he had a lot of detailed information about Murong-Yu. "I wanted to capture and train you a long time ago. However, I had some misgivings. I didn't expect your cultivation to be so terrifying. It didn't take you a few eras to reach this level." Xian Junhua sighed. As he spoke, Xian Junhua kept sizing up Murong-Yu's body with a strange look. Seeing this, Murong-Yu got goosebumps. It's really different with the chaotic celestial body. Your strength has increased by leaps and bounds. Even the people around you have benefited. Xian Junhua continued to sigh. Now, many of Murong-Yu's people had reached the Chaos Ancestor Saint level. Even though Murong-Yu had always felt that their strength was increasing too slowly, Murong-Yu had always thought that they were progressing too slowly. However, that was because Murong-Yu's strength was increasing too quickly. In fact, whether it was Zhao Jiqing, Murong Xian, Zhang Ao, Little Lion King, or the others, the speed of their strength improvement was extremely terrifying. Think about it. In less than 2 eras, how many people had reached the Chaos Ancestor Saint level in the entire Holy World in the past? Those people did exist, but all of them were peerless geniuses. However, there weren't many people around Murong-Yu who could reach the level of peerless geniuses. In other words, all of this was because of Murong-Yu and because of Murong-Yu. However, Murong-Yu's improvement was too fast. No matter how fast the people around him were, they couldn't keep up with his footsteps. Therefore, whether it was Little Lion King or Fan Tong, they had been left far behind by Murong-Yu. It wasn't that Murong-Yu didn't want to roam the outside world with them. Instead, their strength was far inferior to Murong-Yu's. Not only would following Murong-Yu be useless, but they would also become a burden to Murong-Yu at times. Of course, Murong-Yu didn't think of them as a burden, but it was too dangerous for them to follow him. Therefore, he didn't take these brothers with him when he went out. Instead, he left them in Shenzhen and let them cultivate. Even if they weren't together often, their brotherhood wouldn't be broken. The Hallowed Hall's ability can affect the entire Chaos Layer. Xian Junhua, I'll give you a mission now. Start nibbling away at the other factions in the Chaos Layer and strive to become the overlord of the Chaos Layer. Murong-Yu pondered for a moment before saying to Xian Junhua. Xian Junhua nodded. He couldn't refuse Murong-Yu's request, because if he refused, maybe the little old man would jump out and slap him to death. The Hallowed Hall has over 10,000 experts on the Saint rankings. Some of them are experts on the Saint rankings of the human race. You can gather them to the Human Race Alliance. With their strength, they can carry out assassinations or do things that are inconvenient for you. Xian Junhua suggested. Murong-Yu only knew now that the number of experts on the Saint rankings of the human race had exceeded his expectations. Other than the experts on the Saint rankings of the 10 sacred grounds, there were many other experts on the Saint rankings of the human race. Some of them were assassins from the Hallowed Hall. There were about 10 of them. Other than the experts on the Saint rankings, summon all the powerful assassins back to the Saint's world. Moronyu thought about it and said again. After all, the main force in a war between races was still the ordinary Saints. Although the experts on the Saint rankings of the human race had greater strength. But a war never depended on one's strength alone. No matter how strong you were, could you withstand the attacks of an entire race's Saints? No matter how strong you were, could you manage an entire race alone? Also, do you know what's going on with the current Supremes? Why aren't there any more Supremes? Also, find me anything in the chaotic layer in the Saint's world that contains great power. I have great use for it. Moronyu had no choice. If he wanted to increase his cultivation level, he could only refine a Supreme Being weapon. But Supreme Being weapons were so precious and rare. Where could he find them? I'm not too sure about the Supremes. I think that little old man might be a Supreme Being. As for items that contain great power, I know of one. I just don't know if it's to your liking. Xin Junhua blurted out. Moronyu nodded, although he was a little disappointed that Xin Junhua didn't know about the Supremes. However, Xin Junhua's last sentence made him a little excited. Let's go and take a look now. Moronyu couldn't wait any longer. He took a step forward and disappeared from the hall. Chapter 1737. Naturally, Moronyu couldn't just leave like that. After making some arrangements, Xin Junhua left under Muronyu's constant urging. Their target was another relatively famous place in the Chaos Layer. It was not famous because it was a city or a large faction's base, but because there was an extremely large Chaos Stone there. Speaking of this Chaos Stone, those who had been in the Chaos Layer for a while knew what it was. It was a pitch-black boulder the size of a mountain. On the surface, this boulder was just a little bigger, but there was nothing special about it. However, this Chaos Stone constantly emitted extremely pure chaos energy. This chaos energy was different from the ordinary chaos energy in the Chaos Layer. Other than Moronyu, no one could directly absorb and refine ordinary energy. However, the chaos energy emitted by this boulder was like a chaos crystal, which could allow people to cultivate. As a result, a large number of sages gathered around the Chaos Stone. There were experts on the Saint rankings, as well as ordinary rank 9 Chaos Ancestor sages. However, although the Chaos Stone was huge, it was only a boulder after all. The area covered by the energy it emitted was extremely limited. However, many people wanted to cultivate here. As a result, there would often be battles here. In the beginning, no one was willing to submit to anyone. They fought whoever they saw. It was impossible for people to cultivate nearby in peace. As a result, later on, a few powerful factions joined forces and controlled the area around the Chaos Stone. Want to cultivate nearby? Sure. However, you had to pay a fee. The higher the value of the treasure, the longer you could stay near the Chaos Stone, and the closer you were to the Chaos Stone. Even so, more and more people came to cultivate near the Chaos Stone. It was so crowded that it was difficult to even stick a pin in. Hearing Xin Junhua's introduction, Moronyu only smiled and did not comment. The chaos energy emitted by the Chaos Stone did not attract him at all. What he cared about was that Chaos Stone. If he could devour that Chaos Stone, his strength would probably skyrocket again. There was a large city near the Chaos Stone called Stone City. It was as lively as Chaos City. However, its safety was far inferior to Chaos City. After all, although there were many experts gathered here, they were just a motley crew. They would even fight, let alone those chaos beasts. In fact, throughout history, the Stone City had been massacred by the beasts of chaos many times. There were a few times when they razed the entire Stone City to the ground, killing all the saints here. Is the Saint Hall among the factions that control the Chaos Gems? Moronyu asked along the way. Xin Junhua chuckled awkwardly. You must be joking. Our Hall of Saint Execution is the #1 assassin organization in the Holy World. However, we're no different from a rat crossing the street. We're the type that everyone wants to beat up. Which force would dare to cooperate with us? Moronyu rolled his eyes. He had already guessed it, but he just wanted to ask. Soon, they arrived at Stone City. However, they didn't stop at the Stone City. Instead, they continued to fly toward the Chaos Gems. Stop right there, or I'll kill you. Before the two of them could even get close to the Chaos Stone, or even see the Chaos Stone, they were stopped by a shout. At the same time, a small team of more than 10 people stepped out of the void. They were all experts on the Saint rankings. If you want to cultivate near the Chaos Stone, you'll have to go to Stone City to pay the fee. Then, you'll have to queue up and wait for the summons. One of the experts on the Saint rankings glanced at Moronyu and Xian Junhua and said with a frown. Moronyu raised his eyebrows. How long do I have to wait? Not long. It depends on the value of the treasure you've paid. If it's nothing, it's not a problem to wait until the next epoch. Of course, the higher the value of the treasure you've paid, the shorter the wait. Who knows, we might even be able to cultivate near the Chaos Stone. Another expert on the Saint ranking smiled as he looked at Moronyu. What if we don't pay the treasure? Xian Junhua looked at the experts on the Saint rankings unhappily. His eyes shone with killing intent. We'll kill you. You can try. Another expert on the Saint rankings said coldly. They looked at Moronyu and Xian Junhua with disdain. They were experts on the Saint rankings. In addition to the powerful forces behind them, they didn't fear anyone. They didn't even fear the chaotic sect or the Saint Slaying Hall. What made Moronyu depressed was that the chaotic sect and the Saint Slaying Hall weren't one of the major forces that controlled the Chaos Stones. In other words, apart from forcing his way through, Moronyu's only option was to hand over the treasures. However, how long would he have to wait? Perhaps by the time it was Moronyu's turn, the entire holy world would have been unified. I like to see how you're going to kill me. Xian Junhua sneered and took a step forward. You're asking for it. The expert on the Saint rankings who had spoken harshly was enraged. He let out a furious roar and made his move. He used his fingers like a sword and slashed at Xian Junhua. As the hall master of the Saint Slaying Hall, Xian Junhua was the most terrifying assassin. Not only was he powerful, but he was also not a soft-hearted person. Therefore, he attacked with a fatal blow. How dare an ant like you act so presumptuously in front of me? You're asking for it. As he spoke, Xian Junhua reached out his hand and slammed it at the expert on the Saint rankings' head. Whoosh! Initially, the expert on the Saint rankings did not think much of it. However, his expression changed very quickly. Because Xian Junhua's speed was extremely fast, he had already grabbed his head in a split second. The expert on the Saint rankings was terrified. With a thought, he wanted to retreat. However, Xian Junhua had already decided to kill him. How could he let him escape? An extremely violent power surged out of his palm. With a cracking sound, the head of the expert on the Saint rankings was turned to dust. The power continued to grind down. In the next moment, the expert on the Saint rankings' entire body and soul were shattered. In just an instant, the expert on the Saint rankings was killed. At this moment, the companions of the expert on the Saint rankings who had been killed had yet to react. It was not that they reacted too slowly. Everything had happened too quickly. Moreover, they had never thought that there would be someone who dared to kill one of them here. You killed him. After a long while, one of the experts on the Saint rankings looked at Xian Junhua in disbelief and mumbled to himself. At this moment, his words had also awakened the others who were still in shock. Therefore, all of them unleashed a terrifying aura and glared at Xian Junhua and Moronyu with murderous intent. However, none of them dared to make a move. Xian Junhua was simply too powerful. They were extremely wary of him. However, just because they did not dare to make a move, it did not mean that they did not do anything. Someone had already alerted them. They believed that their men would rush over very soon. Who are these two ferocious men? They actually killed these overlords here. TSK, they're really fearless. There are many people nearby. Naturally, many of them had seen Xian Junhua kill the expert. Xian Junhua's expression did not change at all. As for Moronyu, he was incomparably calm and composed. Since that's the case, why don't we go in and take the Chaos Gem away? Moronyu said indifferently. Then, He stepped forward and slowly flew towards the Chaos Gem. As for Xi and Junhua, he followed closely behind Murongyu. As for the experts on the holy leaderboard, they were a joke, although they were blocking in front of Murongyu and his companion. When Murongyu and his companion took a step forward, they had to take a step back. Such a scene made the surrounding onlookers feel incomparably amused. Some of them even laughed out loud. However, they could not do anything. They did not dare to make a move. Therefore, as they advanced and retreated, they were already close to the periphery of the Chaos Gem. Murongyu looked down from the void. The area below was divided into small houses. Every small house had a sage cultivating inside. Among them were rank 9 chaotic ancestor sages and experts on the holy leaderboard. There were many such small houses. Moreover, they were almost the same size. However, the closer they were to the Chaos Gem, the bigger the house. After all, the cost of those small houses was already extremely high. They could not possibly let those people cultivate in a small house. Finally, Murongyu saw the legendary Chaos Gem. It was just a huge rock the size of a mountain. There was nothing special about it, other than the fact that it could emit pure chaotic energy. No, although the chaotic energy is pure, it does not seem to be complete chaotic energy. Murongyu's heart skipped a beat. He closed his eyes and carefully felt it. The Chaos Gem emitted chaotic energy. However, it contained a kind of energy that was similar to Murongyu's. It was similar to the energy that Murongyu had come into contact with before. However, it did not seem to be. It seemed to be of a much higher level than the energy that Murongyu had come into contact with before. However, their essence should be similar. Otherwise, Murongyu would not have found it familiar. What kind of energy is this? Murongyu thought to himself. As he analyzed the energy emitted by the Chaos Gem, he searched through his memories. Why does it seem so similar to the origin energy of the immortal world and the god world? Suddenly, an idea flashed through Murongyu's mind. Following that, he opened his eyes abruptly. His face was filled with excitement. That's right, origin energy. This is origin energy. The reason why it's of a higher level than the god world's origin energy is because the origin energy emitted by the Chaos Gem does not belong to the god world. It belongs to the saint's world. The saint's world is of a higher level than the god world. It's very normal for origin energy to be of a higher level than the god world's origin energy. Murongyu was so excited that he almost roared. However, he was still rational. He did not shout out loud. Otherwise, if others found out, it would be impossible for him to obtain the Chaos Gem. No, it should not be called a Chaos Gem. It should be called an Origin Energy Stone. However, if this was an Origin Energy Stone, why would it appear here? Should an Origin Energy be controlled by a ruler? Although Murongyu had never seen a ruler before, he knew what it meant to be one. For example, he was the ruler of the immortal world and the god world. This was because he controlled the origin energy of the immortal world and the god world. Chapter 1738. Only those who obtained the acknowledgement of the world's origin energy had the right to become the ruler of the world. To become a true ruler, one had to completely control the origin energy. Just like the origin energy of the 3,000 immortal worlds and the god world, they were all under Murongyu's sole control. This was also why Murongyu had become the ruler of those worlds. After Murongyu gained control of the origin energy of the god world and the immortal worlds, a portion of it gathered on Murongyu's body. There was also a portion scattered throughout the entire world. There was actually not much origin energy. After it was scattered throughout the world, no one apart from Murongyu could sense it, let alone control or refine it. As a result, as long as Murongyu did not die in the god world and the immortal world, no one else would be able to discover the existence of origin energy. It should be the same in the saint's world. However, the origin stone in front of Murongyu was constantly emitting strands of origin energy. This puzzled Murongyu. Could it be that the ruler of the saint's world doesn't completely control the saint's world because he hasn't obtained the acknowledgement of all the origin energy? Or perhaps he hasn't obtained the acknowledgement of all the origin energy at all. He's only forcefully refined a portion. He didn't get the rest of the origin energy. Moronu pondered. At first, this thought had only flashed through his mind. However, the more Moronu thought about it, the more likely it was. This was because the current ruler of the heavens had killed the previous ruler to become a ruler. Forcefully killed. He had forcefully seized the previous ruler's position and even the origin energy. Perhaps he hadn't obtained the acknowledgement of the saint's world's origin energy at all. In other words, he hadn't completely controlled the saint's world. As a result, there should be a huge gap between his abilities and an ordinary ruler's. However, this wasn't what Moronu was thinking about right now. He hadn't reached that level yet, so there was no point in thinking about it. However, if Moronu wanted to become the ruler of the saint's world, he had to become the ruler of the saint's world. Even if he didn't become a sovereign, he still had to pass the threshold of becoming sovereign. This was because the hegemon wanted to become the master of primordial chaos, which meant that he absolutely had to acquire Moronu's body. In other words, sooner or later, the two of them would face off against each other. However, in the saint's world, Moronu had no advantage at all. It was just like the people from the god realm and the immortal realm who wanted to challenge Moronu. There was no need for Moronu to make a move. He only needed to think about it and use his origin energy to annihilate them. Originally, Moronu did not have much confidence in his heart. Xian Junhua unleashed his might and roared as he attacked again. Hearing Xian Junhua's words, the experts on the saint rankings could not help but vomit blood. What do you mean by occupying the saint rankings for too long? Even if they died, the people behind them would not be able to enter the saint rankings. It was not easy to enter the saint rankings, because if one did not meet the conditions to enter the saint rankings, even if all the experts on the saint rankings were killed, the people behind them would not automatically enter the saint rankings. Xian Junhua's meaning was clear. These people had the saint rankings, but did not have the strength that experts on the saint rankings should have. They were similar to those who had not entered the saint rankings yet. New grudges and old grudges. Therefore, these people all erupted and locked on Xian Junhua as they attacked him in an extremely violent manner. However, Xian Junhua's strength was truly heaven-defying. His figure disappeared on the spot in a flash. Those people did not even touch the corner of his clothes. Just as everyone was still searching for Xian Junhua's figure, a shrill scream suddenly came from the crowd. Everyone was shocked because that scream was very familiar to them. Therefore, they looked in the direction of the scream and happened to see one of their companions being killed by Xian Junhua with a single punch. When the super existence who rank 5th on the saint rankings attacked, these people were like ants. Perhaps only the top 20 on the saint rankings could block one or two of Xian Junhua's moves. However, they were still no match for Xian Junhua. Moronu did not care about the battle at all. Xian Junhua's strength was enough to wipe out these people, unless the top 3 on the saint rankings attacked. Therefore, Moronu strode toward the origin stone. However, how could he get the origin stone so easily? Just as Moronu moved, an expert on the saint rankings appeared in front of him and looked at Moronu coldly. A mere rank 3 chaotic ancestor saint dares to come here? You're courting death. As he spoke, the expert on the saint rankings attacked and threw a punch at Moronu. A cold light flashed across Moronu's eyes. This person could clearly see his cultivation level, but he attacked with all his might. In other words, this person wanted to kill Moronu with a single blow. Moronu would never show mercy to people who wanted to kill him. Therefore, he attacked. He did not move much, but he used his fingers like a sword and slashed at the expert on the saint rankings. When they saw Moronu attack, everyone who saw it, including the expert on the saint rankings, could not help but look disdainful. How could someone who was not even a rank 9 chaotic ancestor saint attack an expert on the saint rankings? Wasn't this arrogance boundless? However, their jaws dropped to the ground very quickly. Poof! Murong Yu's sword cut the opponent's saint-ranking expert into pieces. Even his soul was destroyed along with the refinement. He was even more thorough and swift than Xian Junhua. This can't be real, right? The surrounding people were shocked when they saw that the expert on the saint rankings was killed before he could even react. While the others were shocked, the people from the other forces were furious. One should know that there were only a few experts on the saint rankings. There was one less expert on the saint rankings if one of them died. In a few breaths' time, their experts on the saint rankings were killed one after another. They were furious. Therefore, some people abandoned Xian Junhua and charged at Murong Yu. Xian Junhua shook his head but did not lend a helping hand. He was well aware of Murong Yu's situation. This guy looked like an ant, but when he unleashed his full power, he was an immemorial giant beast with terrifying strength. Scram! Murong Yu glanced at those people coldly and continued walking toward the origin stone. Those people were instantly intimidated. However, they quickly came to their senses and charged at Murong Yu with furious roars. "You're courting death." Murong Yu's face was gloomy. With a thought, he drew out the Xianyuan sword and slashed at them. Poof! A shocking sword ray shot out from the tip of the Xianyuan sword and rapidly enlarged. At that moment, the experts on the saint rankings who were charging at Murong Yu were suddenly enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. In their shock, they tried to escape. However, it was too late. At that moment, the sword ray had already flashed past their waists. Poof! 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 After 7 muffled sounds in a row, 7 of them were cut in half at the same time. As for their souls, they were ground to dust. They were dead. 7 experts on the saint rankings were killed in one strike. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people were shocked. This guy is definitely in the top 10 on the saint rankings. He's too terrifying. The surrounding people were extremely shocked. Even the experts on the saint rankings who were fighting with Xian Junhua were stunned by the scene before them. Haha, I played enough with you guys. Now all of you can die. Xian Junhua laughed and attacked with all his might. Chapter 1739. Boom! One punch. With just one punch, the experts on the saint rankings who had surrounded Xian Junhua were all blown up. One by one, their bodies were blasted into a cloud of blood mist, which scattered in the void. Finally, they mixed together and bloomed in the void like a huge blood flower. This time, Xian Junhua attacked with all his might. None of the dozens of experts on the saint rankings were spared. They were all killed. In other words, after Xian Junhua attacked with all his might, the experts on the saint rankings who were guarding the origin stone from the major forces who controlled it were all wiped out. Most of them were killed by Xian Junhua. Fear, incomparable fear. Those who cultivated in this area had to pay a certain fee to be qualified to cultivate here. Of course, they knew what those forces meant. Because of the dozens of experts on the saint rankings, almost no one would cause trouble here. In fact, it was not that no one had caused trouble here. It was that the troublemakers had all been killed. However, today, Murong Yu and 2 people had killed dozens of experts on the saint rankings. What kind of terrifying strength was that? Will these 2 killing gods kill us as well? There was no lack of experts on the saint rankings who were cultivating near the origin stone. However, they were only ordinary experts on the saint rankings. They knew that there was a huge gap between them and Murong Yu and Xian Junhua. Therefore, they all looked at Murong Yu and Yi Shiwen with fear and uneasiness. What they wished for really came true. When they looked at Murong Yu's gaze also looked at them across countless spaces. At that moment, countless people realized that Murong Yu's gaze was only on them. It was so glaring. Even their skin was prickling. From now on, the origin stone belongs to me. Leave immediately. Otherwise, we will personally ask you to leave. Murong Yu's voice was calm, as if there was no malice. However, that was not the meaning in the ears of the people around them. Although the voice was calm, it contained a terrifying killing intent. They were not stupid and naturally understood what Murong Yu meant by asking them to leave. In that case, they wouldn't just leave, they would leave this world forever. As a result, Before Murong you had finished speaking, the experts all leapt out of their houses and flew off into the distance without any hesitation. If they hesitated any longer, they might have to stay here forever. Although some of them had really paid a large amount of treasures, they were only able to enjoy it for a few days. Some of them felt pained, but no one dared to kick Murong Yu or linger on him. Therefore, in less than an hour, there was no one else around the Origin Stone other than Murong Yu and Xian Junhua. Those people had already left long ago. In this world, fists are still the best. If you try to reason with others, they might not listen. But when your fist is bigger than theirs, they will be scared shitless. Looking at the empty surroundings, Xian Junhua sneered with a look of disdain. Murong Yu glanced at Xian Junhua without commenting. Then, he took a step forward and arrived at the mountain-sized Origin Stone. The closer he got to the Origin Stone, the clearer Murong Yu felt the origin energy of the Saint's world. It was exactly because of this origin energy that the cultivation speed of the people around him increased. I must be acknowledged by the origin energy of the Saint's world, Murong Yu thought. At the same time, he reached out his hand and grabbed at the Origin Stone. Seeing this, Xian Junhua, who was behind Murong Yu, could not help but shake his head. This Chaos Stone was so miraculous that countless people wanted to keep it for their own use. However, after countless years, not to mention collecting the Chaos Stone, no one could even shake it a little. Would Murong Yu be able to collect the Chaos Stone? Xian Junhua did not hold out any hope. However, whatever Murong Yu wanted to do, he would help him. As expected, when Murong Yu's hand grabbed the Origin Stone, no matter how Murong Yu shook it, the Origin Stone did not budge at all. Murong Yu's face was filled with shock. With his current strength, let alone a mere boulder, he would be able to withstand it. He could even uproot the largest mountain in the Saint's world. But this Origin Stone, Sacred Master, this Origin Stone is formed by the origin energy of the Saint's world. I think it should be united with the entire Saint's world. In other words, this Origin Stone is one with the entire Saint's world. If you want to collect the Origin Stone, you want to collect the entire Saint world. With your current strength, it's impossible. Just as Murong Yu was deep in thought, Hichu's voice rang out in his head. Murong Yu was stunned. However, he soon came to his senses. Hichu was right. Although Murong Yu was powerful now, he could not even jump out of the Saint's world, let alone collect the entire Saint's world. That was simply impossible. Moreover, origin energy was not something that could be collected just because he wanted to. He had to gain its recognition first. As long as he gained its recognition, Murong Yu would be able to use the origin energy for himself. Murong Yu, you can't collect this Chaos Stone. Legend has it that the rulers of the past came to collect this Origin Stone, but they were unable to move it. Some people even say that this Origin Stone is united with the entire Saint's world. Therefore, as long as we're still in the Saint's world, we can't collect this Chaos Stone. Xian Junhua walked over and advised. Murong Yu smiled. Xian Junhua, sometimes fists are not as useful as reasoning. Do you believe that I can effortlessly collect these Chaos Gems? Xian Junhua shook his head. That was impossible. Then let's wait and see. You stay nearby and watch over me. I refuse to believe that I can't collect this Chaos Stone. Murong Yu clenched his teeth and took a step forward. He appeared above the Source Stone and sat down cross-legged. Chaos Stone, no, Origin Stone. I know you're condensed from the Saint's world's origin energy. I think I'm the only one in the entire Saint's world who knows about it aside from the heavens. What's going on? Xian Junhua had been staring at Murong Yu the entire time. The moment Murong Yu sat down, he discovered to his surprise that the Chaos Stone actually trembled slightly. Although the trembling was extremely small, he truly felt it, and it was not an illusion or an illusion. Could it be that Murong Yu is really capable of collecting this boulder? Xian Junhua thought to himself as an incomparably absurd idea appeared in his mind. He did not think that the Chaos Stone trembled because Murong Yu sat down. Murong Yu was not that heavy. This was a Chaos Stone that even rulers could not move, let alone Murong Yu. How is that possible? Xian Junhua shook his head and chased that absurd thought out of his head. At this moment, a smile appeared on Murong Yu's face. How could he not notice something that even an outsider like Xian Junhua could notice? He also felt the origin stone tremble. He also knew why the origin stone was trembling. The Saint's world's origin energy still ignored him. However, a reaction was a good start. As a result, Murong Yu continued. Do you know why I know you're condensed from the Saint's world's origin energy? That's because I'm the ruler of the cultivation world, the immortal world, and the God world below you. The origin energy of those worlds has already acknowledged me. I'll be honest with you. I also want to gain your acknowledgement and then control the entire world. However, being a ruler is not my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is to become a chaos controller, to control the endless chaos stone and become the strongest person in the world. At this point, the origin stone under Murong Yu's but trembled slightly again. So much so that Murong, you could even feel a faint sneer coming from it. The Saint's world's origin energy was looking down on Murong Yu. This was a good thing for Murong Yu. He was most afraid that the Saint's world's origin energy would ignore him. Since there was a reaction, he could continue. What? Are you looking down on me? Do you think I can't do it? Do you know what the chaotic celestial body constitution is? As long as you don't die, you'll have no problem becoming a chaos controller. And I have the chaotic celestial body constitution. At this point, Murong Yu paused for a moment. Immediately after, a hidden yet extremely powerful consciousness surged into his body and swept through his body. A smile immediately appeared on Murong Yu's face. He knew that the Saint's world's origin energy must have scanned his body to verify his words. Am I right? I have the chaotic celestial body constitution. Murong Yu continued. As long as you acknowledge me, you'll become even stronger in the future. The Saint's world will become even more vast and boundless. Although I don't know why you transformed into a huge rock, I can tell that you're a chaos celestial body. But I can guess that you won't acknowledge the current ruler of the Saint's world, Heaven. Most likely, after killing the previous sovereign, he had forcibly refined a portion of the sovereigns. I'm sure you'll be very unhappy with such a person. You might even want to kill him. But although you're the Saint's world's origin energy, you don't have the ability to kill Heaven. Am I right? As long as you acknowledge me, I'll definitely kill the ruler. There will be an ultimate battle between Heaven and me one day. If you can help me, my chances of killing him will be higher. Of course, I'm not completely confident, but you can give me a chance. Give yourself a chance. What do you think? After saying that, Murong Yu didn't continue because he had nothing to say. The Saint's world's origin energy didn't react either. However, Murong Yu wasn't in a hurry. He was waiting for the Saint's world's origin energy to make a choice. Xian Junhua, who was standing guard for Murong Yu outside the Chaos Stone, was depressed. He could take this Chaos Stone without doing anything but sitting on this huge rock? Isn't that a little too ridiculous? In any case, Xian Junhua didn't believe that Murong Yu could take this Chaos Stone. If he can, I'll take his surname. Xian Junhua thought to himself. Swish! Xian Junhua had just finished speaking when the Chaos Stone, which hadn't reacted all this time, suddenly exploded with blinding light. Then, under Xian Junhua's shocked gaze, the Chaos Stone rapidly shrank. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.